Yeah, well, until he gets here, we'd be.
Yeah.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the May meeting of the Town of Poughkeepsie Zoning Board of Appeals. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, good evening. In tonight's session, we're missing one of the regular board members, so Phyllis will be sitting in. If the regular board member arrives, he'll take his seat, and Phyllis is the alternate. For those of you that are new to the procedure of the ZBA, the meeting is divided into two parts. During the first section, we hold public hearings on each of the applications before us. The public hearing starts with the applicant coming forward and being sworn in, and then giving a very brief description of what that particular application is about, why it's being sought. The board members will have an opportunity to ask questions at that point. When the board has finished asking its questions, we will open the floor to anyone from the public that wishes to comment on that application, but on that application only. We'll go through the applications in the order in which you find them on the agenda. If you need a copy of the agenda, they're available in the tray right next to our counsel's desk. When we've completed all of the public hearings, we then return to the top of the agenda for the deliberation phase. During this part of the meeting, the board discusses the application among ourselves, and we then come to a vote. During this time, there's no further public input, although you're certainly welcome to stay and observe the deliberations. Okay. If there's nothing further, and I guess I want to welcome our newest member, Larry Sloman, and our second newest member, Christine Soricelli. So, welcome. Item number 1, William and Gail O'Neill, 73 Sunset Avenue.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I need to recuse myself from this.
Okay. Yeah. And what this means is that if our other alternate, Paul Leahy, arrives, and he's expected, he will sit as a voting member on this particular application. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
we would be happy to defer to number 2 on the agenda in order to have a full membership sitting on our application with your permission.
If you wish.
Okay.
Certainly.
Jim?
Paul is not coming this evening.
Paul is not coming.
This evening.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Then, if we move to item number 2, let me get our other member.
Did you tell them?
Jim.
Okay. Item number 2, Rudberg Breslau, 3344 North Road.
Good evening.
Good evening, gentlemen. If each of you would identify yourselves for the record and then be sworn in.
I'm Marty Rutberg.
Tom Walsh.
Mr. Rutberg, Mr. Walsh, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Yes.
Please be advised that you are under oath, and any false statements made by you are subject to perjury pursuant to the laws of the state of New York.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the first thing I'd like to do for the record is correct our address. It's 3344 Route 9 North. The North Road address belongs to Michael Ortega's building, which looks like it's part of our building, but he has a completely different address.
Okay. Yeah, I went on parcel access,
Yeah.
and they give the address as 234 North Road.
Yeah, that's, when we moved in there, we were immediately contacted by the 911 folks who said that that isn't the address that they have, and if we continue to use it, they won't come if we need them. So it's been 7 years or so now, and we get mail at 3344.
Okay, so once again, the correct legal address is
3344 Route 9 North.
Route 9 North. Okay, we will change that. Okay, all right. I would.
It's the old address still rattles around out there. It's not just me. All of the commercial tenants use the 3344 Route 9 North address.
Okay.
And perhaps that may have some bearing, actually. The history of the building may have some bearing.
Okay.
On the
Okay.
application.
Well, thank you for doing that, because I was going to raise that. But all right. So if you want to just briefly explain your application.
I will, and I will be very brief, because I know that I've been on the calendar before. You have my original application, and then just today, I hope you all received the photographs that I brought in for you. And because I've been on before and adjourned last month because of a conflict with a holiday, and here I am again, the first thing I want to tell you is that I never intended my application to become burdensome or extra work or a source of disagreement among the board here, and certainly not between the town and the county. After the first time we were on the calendar, of course, I became aware that the county had sent a letter, and I called the county executive's office to ask about it, and there was kind of a disconnect where the county was telling me that they send out a routine letter notifying towns when there's a variance request that they need a supermajority and that it's up to the town what they do. And I said, and I think you'll all agree with me, that that letter didn't quite read that way. And I was in contact with Ron Hicks, who actually was going to come and speak on my behalf tonight. I have a text from him, a very brief text that I'll read you. He's stuck at legislature and couldn't make it over. But he asked to see the letter, and when I sent him the letter, he expressed some astonishment. And I mean, you know, I'm not active politically, and I'm dealing a little bit here with what goes on at county, but he wanted me to express the fact that there's no perception by anyone at county that my sign is in any way offensive. And he asked me to make certain points to you tonight, and to mention that if the board really wants to hear from him personally, he would come to yet another adjourned meeting. I hope that's not going to be necessary, but I hold that out to you. His explanation actually for the letter, and then I'll leave it in the past, and I don't know if this will sit with you any more comfortably than with me, was that there was an outgoing commissioner that at county level there had been great frustration that the towns, not us, but the town often don't make that mandatory filing, which you quite properly did, when there's a variance request, and that the county kind of felt that it didn't have its finger on things. So he said that perhaps with the change in commissioners just then taking place, someone at the county level had decided to write more than the usual pro forma letter, and that I kind of maybe got caught up in that. He asked me to tell you something that I would tell you myself anyway, and we kind of began there. This building apparently exists on the record as one structure with neighborhood business zoning. Originally, it was just the Artega Sports and Fitness building facing and being addressed on North Road, where there is, once you get past the hospital driveway and the diner, what you would properly call a neighborhood. So neighborhood zoning made perfect sense. When Mike added on the commercial space, and we are literally structurally separate, there's no access to the gym for the public anyway, I occasionally can sneak in with a key to the elevator, but there's no access to the gymnasium from our Route 9 side, nor can people from the gymnasium access our Route 9 side. He built the space with the intent, and I think he accomplished it, of it being beautiful, grade A, commercial space facing the main commercial thoroughfare of the county, which, as you can see from some of the latter exhibits in today's submission, is all we face. We are visible only to automobiles. There's no neighborhood out there. At some distance, there's the baseball field for Marist, but just as much as I need my binoculars to watch their games, my sign is just a blip in the horizon from over there. Neither from north or south is my sign visible from any other structure, residential or commercial. When Mike added the commercial space on, I can only surmise that because it was considered part of the same building, the zoning was left the same. But the design of the facade, the height of the building, the actual units of facade allocated for signage are huge. It's built on the scale of sections in malls. And no one has ever complained about the signs. We've had nothing but compliments about it. And although it's true that because the addition of Larry Breslow's name pushes me somewhat larger than the signs above me, if you look at the photographs, everything is balanced. And then if you go to the top of the building, Mike has two signs facing west and facing north, which each of which exceeds my signage by, I put in half. Frankly, I think it's a little more. It's about 160 feet. And that's not a complaint. I don't want to cause more trouble for Mike. His signs look fabulous because they fit the building. So I'm hard-pressed to understand why my sign would be seen as troubling when you really take into consideration what's there, the context that it's in, what it faces, and the hardship. Frankly, I know if you've all looked at my initial submission, you see the history of what happened. It was Rutberg injury law. I had a permit, and I had these existing letters. When Mr. Basso became ill and asked me to take over his caseload for his family, I put his name up out of respect, naturally using the same size letters that Rutberg was. Larry Breslow was always the partner. He stood aside also out of respect for the senior, Miss John Basso. So I already had the B, an O, and an S to be part of Breslow at a cost at this point, frankly, of something approaching $20,000 I've got hanging up there. And if this sign has to be taken down, now with the additional letters to fill out Larry's last name, I'm looking at about another close to $20,000 to replace a sign for what would be visually very little difference from what's up there. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that shrinking the sign will destroy my business. I hope I've built something stronger than that. And I'm not, that simply would be disingenuous, but it would be a bit of a killer to have to spend another $20,000 to shrink the dimensions of these letters by a few inches each letter. I hope that you've all had occasion, I mean, most people in the county go by there to really look at it, and I'm about done. And I hope that you really will all look at the photographs, including by comparison. I couldn't resist, and I'm not trying to be catty, and I'm not trying to cause anybody else trouble, but the property twice north of me, which is facing North Road, the signs there may well be within zoning, but if you take the comparison of the size of those signs to the buildings that they're on, you have something over there that looks somewhat like a side street bazaar as compared with what I hope you would all find to be a rather classy facade in our building. I kind of set the tone. We use LED letters, high grade. The other tenants followed suit, and I hope that there really is nothing visually offensive or garish about it. Other than that, or what Mr. Walsh might have to say, I'm here to answer your questions and to just ask that you give this careful consideration, and if possible, give me the variance that I'm asking for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to let everybody know that one of our regular board members, Anthony Cocello, has arrived, so we have the full slate here. Okay. And will not be, at least for this hearing, be using an alternate. Okay. Betty, you have any questions?
I know I asked this before. Are you going to be on the pylon sign out front?
No,
No.
that has never been made available to me, and I think that sign, frankly, isn't very attractive. I wouldn't want to be there.
I think one of the issues that we had when this first came in was that we would like to have seen all of the signs have some uniformity to them. I mean, you could understand that looking at the building, you have different size, all different sizes, and that's kind of what we were looking for. Now, are you saying that, you mentioned $20,000, is that what that sign cost?
I have that much into the existing sign,
Into the
and then to
existing
replace it would be something approaching that.
the
It's a killer.
right.
Because we utilized Rutberg already on this particular sign now.
Ms. Bomba, I know exactly what you mean about uniformity. All I can say to that is, and again, I don't want to cause anybody else trouble, but you're aware that my sign was there before the one above me. That's a recent arrival. The Rutberg personal injury law has been there for 7 years. The change was the cycling of Basso, a nice short last name, with Breslow, a somewhat more lettered
teacher.
last name. That's the problem. I mean, I agree with you that uniformity is nice. On the other hand, when you look at the signs at night, there is a certain visual consistency. They're all LEDs. You know, nobody has these box type signs. They're all of good quality. Prime happens to light green. Mine happens to light blue. And I don't know what the Kenny sign lights, frankly, as I picture it at night now. I have a feeling it might be white.
It's white behind,
The white behind
according
you.
to the picture that you have here. I have no other questions.
Okay, Art?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. My first one is that Breslow went up after our last meeting, I believe.
Well, yes,
why
and
would
I
that
don't
have
want that to be misunderstood. As of the last meeting, those letters were on his workbench. I had already paid for them, and there was a scaffold. I don't know if I tried to show you. There was a scaffold already in place. In order to hang my sign, his guy, he can't fit, but his guy goes through a little hatch, and he's crawling, believe it or not, on sheetrock down there. So every time they have to do it, they build an exterior scaffold to support the sheetrock so the guy can crawl. It's unbelievable to me, but there are no joists in that, what looks from the ground like a floor. So that scaffold was already in place. The letters had already been purchased, and I did not have them put up to fly in your face or out of any disrespect. I had them put up, because it's very scary to go 2 months, 3 months without signage, proper signage. The Basso had to be taken down. His health condition forced him to stop working, and it would have been professionally improper for me to keep his name up as he was no longer part of my firm. So I told Tom, and I take the blame for it, not him, and I told Mike that I take the blame for it, not him, to just put it up, and we'd photograph it, and we'd come forth. It can be taken down with just as much horrible labor and expense as it was put up, but I didn't do it callously or to fly in the face of this board.
Okay. And can you tell me, and I know this question came up at the earlier meeting, was there ever a permit issued for this sign?
There was a permit issued for Rutberg
The
personal
original
injury
sign,
law.
There was one, okay.
When John got his diagnosis, the doctors only gave him 5 or 6 months. And I put it up there figuring that it was not going to be up there very long. God gave him longer until now, but now we're on a very slippery slope. But that was why, that I admit, I just did it out of a sense of obligation.
I can appreciate that, but, my main thrust there was you have somewhere a permit for that
Permit for
sign.
Rutberg
It's on
personal
file
injury. Yes,
somewhere.
you have it, yes. Tom got it when we first moved in.
And I think the other thing that we normally ask, and I see it's in the staff review, how would you feel about coming in with an alternate decision, and you're aware of what we usually ask for, what meets code, what your suggestion for a sign is, and what's an in-between sign? You've been before us before, I believe, and are aware of.
Well, I gave you the 3 different layouts showing the medium size,
Do you have that? When was that?
I didn't see that.
that was in this packet,
In this packet?
in this packet.
The one was put before us
The
today?
original packet for the meeting that was supposed to be on April 21st.
Bear with me a minute.
Sure.
Yeah, we never got anything new last month.
I have to
No,
admit,
he just said April
That
21st, which
he-
was last month. Because
I think-
you asked him at the March meeting.
yeah, Tom provided them to my office, and I'm not sure that those different renderings ever found their way into a submission, and
Yeah.
oh, here, no, I have them with me, here. If I give you singles, can you make copies or share them?
We'll pass them around.
Okay, here they are. They were tucked back here. They should have been submitted. I apologize, but happily, I have them. May I approach or?
Sure.
Okay. Usually a court officer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you can just start it there and pass them along.
That's 77 square, which is about Midland, and 40-something square.
Yeah, the one is the 50 square feet, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't see
Okay.
it here.
Art, do you have anything else?
No, I'll look at these, and I'm okay for now.
Okay.
Okay, before we look at the pictures, what is the size of the existing sign right now?
The sign that's up there is what, 107?
Square foot.
107 square feet.
Okay.
That includes, the negative space and the logo.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
My question had to do with the color. Now, I noticed in the new submission, you've got both the sign at night and during the day. And at night, it appears to be a kind of a blue color.
107.
During the day, it looks a kind of golden.
Yeah.
Is that the intent?
It's not lit gold. It's titanium with gold.
It's gold titanium, yeah, it's a gold plated.
Like Fort Knox
Titanium.
is up on the wall there. But,
It's a mirror gold.
it's gold.
The high-end letter is
Yeah.
basically what it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
The light that you see at night is coming out
from behind, yes, yes.
the letters.
There's
Yes.
blue LEDs on the inside pointed towards the building, and there's then Lexan backers to protect it from the elements to keep the longevity of the LEDs.
Okay, okay. Christine, do you have any questions? Or I caught you at a bad moment.
You do have another one.
Do you have any questions, Christine?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Larry? Anthony?
I do have a couple questions. This packet is dated today. This is the first time we're seeing this, right?
Right.
Everyone on the
I
board?
brought it in this afternoon. Yeah.
Aside from that, in the photo that's being distributed, why didn't you originally come in for the additional sign for the lettering that you're putting up now?
It was
You
all,
changed the name,
right.
and you didn't know that it was going to exceed what you already had, and because it was a minute amount, I don't know what that number is exactly.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's somewhere in this packet. That triggered you to come here, or how did you end up here?
No, we were always coming here.
Okay.
We came here, as was just pointed out, we filed the request for a variance before the
All right.
sign was put up.
Gotcha.
But I can, from your perspective, I can see why you asked the question. I would hope to be an experienced guy in certain areas of law, but I actually have very little experience with stuff like this, and I never imagined that it was going to be a problem, and I didn't even realize that the addition of, it's the LOW that does it, Breslow, was going to push me out over the limit. The lack of experience is such that at the beginning of tonight's proceeding, when Ms. Van Tassel deferred to number 2 on the agenda, I was sure I was getting into some kind of trouble, but it hasn't been so bad. So we filed the original application before putting anything up.
Right.
And it's strictly my lack of knowledge, my naivete, that I guess, looking back, I said, look, Tom, it's what is it, four letters that we're missing.
Yes.
Get them and get the thing ready so that as soon as we can, because again, I had to get John Basso's name down. A scaffold was put up. He's not cheap, so I already had work in motion, and I was hoping to do it all in one swing. And that's the only reason that this overlap occurred. But again, the original filing was submitted here before anything went up.
All right, thank you.
Carmen?
Yes, and I noticed when I'm looking at the 3 sign on the building, that horizontally, yours is deeper, isn't it? I mean, vertically, it's deeper.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's actually,
It's wider than the other 2.
the prime is taller than mine. If you look up at the word prime, those letters vertically.
I'm talking about the space of the sign, the background of the sign.
Oh, yes, yes. You mean distance from the wall, that it protrudes more, or? I'm not understanding your question, I'm sorry.
Actually, the height of the sign is what I would say. See, you're looking at the 3 signs,
Right.
and this one is deeper, going down, vertical. Rupberg and Breslow is horizontal. I'm talking about the width of this of the sign, the background.
The fascia of the building you're talking about? Okay. I believe, you're saying that the fascia
Oh, is the
behind
fascia
is
itself
larger
bigger?
than the other?
Right.
It seems to be, just like where Mike has his sign, I was trying to figure out a way to measure it. We used a laser line and everything. I think that top black edge where Mike has his sign is more like the size of mine on the bottom. And you're right, the top 2 strips, whatever you might call them, are shallower. It's almost as if it was designed with something like this in mind, but God knows what these architects really ever have in mind.
We don't need to go there.
Of course, it wouldn't have to be that deep if you put personal injury law beyond Breslow, too.
Well,
Longer.
That encompasses the area of where the scales are. The scales kind of go the height of where the top of the R in Rupberg and the bottom of the box where it says personal injury law. So it's balanced that way.
the scales of the logo.
Yeah, well,
I've never acknowledged that those are scales, but Tom calls them scales.
You know, I have to say, Sometimes ignorance is bliss, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Because this sign is already here. And we don't really know how the first two on top were approved. But it is already a fact. And that's just my personal comment. I have no further comments.
Okay, any,
Can we hear the letter from the county again?
Oh, I wanted to read you the text. I wanted to read it into the record.
okay,
It's very
and
short.
I don't have the.
Never mind, I have it.
Of the county, oh, you do, very good. So Betty, you want to just read it?
Oh.
Or do you want me to?
Go ahead, yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question? When were these prepared?
Actually, the reason they only got here, you mean those with measurements or the pictures in today's submission? Those?
Yeah.
Tom did them as you requested after the first time we were on the calendar, and my office never got them here. We had an adjournment, and I just never got them here.
All right. Even though I have a copy, I would just like to go through this, not having seen it until today, and this, and actually read what's in here.
Well, okay, I tell you what, I'm going to do the county, and you say that you have some further things to say about the county's letter, and then perhaps, depending on the will of the board, we may want to adjourn this to give us an opportunity to look through all of the material. I mean, is that...
Well, there's a...
And what does the county have to say, Jim?
Okay. To Zoning Board of Appeals, Town of Poughkeepsie. The Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development has reviewed the submitted referral for countywide and intermunicipal impacts as outlined in general municipal law. Action. Applicant requests an area variance to allow a wall sign of 107.62 square feet where a maximum of 50 square feet is allowed. The property is located on Route 9 in the Neighborhood Business BN District. Comments. The applicant states that the proposed sign is located, quote, at a substantial distance from the road and the sign directs into the parking area from a main road, unquote. In fact, the, quote, massive facade, unquote, that the applicant has noted elsewhere makes the entire building, including the sign in question, readily visible from Route 9. Photographs provided by the applicant show that the existing Rudberg-Basso personal injury law sign is considerably larger than the sign directly above it, which includes more information without any loss of visibility. The applicant has not demonstrated the need for a variance allowing a sign size more than twice the dimensions permitted in the town's own zoning law. Recommendation. For the reasons stated above, our department recommends that the board not grant the requested area variance for the proposed sign. If the board acts contrary to our recommendation, the law requires that it do so by a majority plus one of the full membership of the board, and that it notify us of the reasons for its decision by Noella Hooper, senior planner. Okay, so that's... Yeah, and so you had a...
Very briefly.
Okay.
This is 5:51 this afternoon from Ron Hicks of the County Executive's Office, representative. Marty, the county legislature is at 7 o'clock as well. No idea on timing, so I won't make the town meeting. However, this would not be the first time the town overruled the county. County denied Little Caesars, Buffalo Wild Wings, and Hudson Valley Marketplace, and the town of Poughkeepsie overruled the county. The town adopted a law that prohibits signs larger than 50 square feet in the business neighborhood district, but signs up to 100 are allowed in business highway or highway business, and your building is clearly a highway building, at least on your side, regardless of what is the zoning is on paper. And then this again, good luck. Let me know how it goes.
Okay.
Go figure.
Okay.
Jim, I have one question.
Yeah.
Before, when it said Rutberg and Basso, was that sign, you had a permit for that sign?
No.
No.
I only had a sign for Rutberg Personal Injury Law.
And you had a permit for that? And
Yes.
how big was that?
I don't have the information. The Rutberg was roughly 180 inches wide by 26 inches tall, and then the bottom, I mean, I can give you a rough square footage.
So my question is whether he needs a variant, he already has part of the variance that he's asking for, correct? So should he be asking for whatever additional portion he needs, or if he already has,
Well, we don't know that he had a variance.
Yeah,
Oh,
that was
okay.
within, that, whatever it
saying
is,
that
it was
he
within
thinks he
code, because
So it met the code, is what, he had a permit, so he either met the code or somebody overlooked the fact that it did meet the code and issued a permit.
I think it was within code because the logo wasn't there. The logo went up when Basso.
even Rutberg looks pretty big, like it might not meet the
Oh,
code.
well, I
Yeah,
don't know.
if you,
I guess that's a question then.
yeah, if you take the Breslow out, that reduces
Still pretty
it by
big.
about
Yeah.
35 square feet. Doing the math, rough math in my head.
I don't know what size the
Okay.
original is.
All right,
We could get the original size of Rutberg. We could take it off the actual sign if you want and submit it to you.
Okay,
I
well,
was just thinking about another way to go about this, but
okay.
that's,
All right. Any
Yeah, no, I mean, I think.
other questions from the board? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address this application? Hearing none. Okay. Do we want to close the public hearing? Do you want to adjourn this to the next meeting?
Yeah.
I think, given all of the stuff that we've just gotten today, I really need to sit and think about it. I'd like to go back out there and look at it with the, particularly with the two new renderings that you've got. See what, what we want to do is try to come up with something that's reasonable here.
I would greatly appreciate you looking at it.
And I would just say, Jim, just the board's, I mean, my advice to you is you have to go with the letter from the county that you have. So it's going to require a majority plus one and reasons to the county unless the county sends a replacement letter.
Oh, absolutely. I mean.
I just want to make sure the applicant was
No,
aware.
No, I'm aware of that.
No, and as he's aware, we pay careful attention to everything that the county tells us.
You think for yourselves.
We don't necessarily agree with them. So be assured that we're going to give this a good, hard, independent look.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn this to
So move.
June 9th?
second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Recusals? Okay, so we're adjourned until June 9th.
7 o'clock?
Yes. Okay. So that's item 2. This brings us back to item number 1.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, William and Gail O'Neill, 73 Sunset Avenue.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Oh, and yes, Phyllis. There you are. Okay.
Do we not have enough seats? Do we not have enough?
Okay. Okay. Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Is it now or?
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Okay, so if each of you would just state your name and be sworn in, please.
Jennifer Van Tile, attorney from Cuddy and Vader. Gail O'Neill.
Bill O'Neill.
And Rodney Morrison, professional engineer, LRC Group.
I'm sorry, I lost your last name already.
Morrison.
Mr. Morrison, Ms. Van Tile, Mr. and Mrs. O'Neill. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
Please be advised that you are under oath, and any false statements made by you are subject to perjury pursuant to the laws of the state of New York.
Thank you very much. We're happy to be before the board tonight, and I'm just going to outline our presentation, which will be brief. I'm going to first describe the history of the creation of this lot for which we're requesting a variance. And then Rodney is going to summarize the report he's already submitted to the board and talk about the neighborhood character, specifically the street, and also talk about the viability of parking alternatives, which he has evaluated. Then I'm going to just speak very briefly about the relevant standards for area variances and how they apply to the facts that we have. And I will also very briefly discuss the factors that we believe are different in this case from a certain decision that this board made in 2009 about parking in the front yard, so that we're clear that precedent is not being violated here. Then Bill would like to make us a brief statement, and then finally, we have some letters with us from neighbors of the O'Neills who are unable to be here tonight to submit to the board. So we hope that we will keep within your time frame of being brief. So to start off with the key facts, I think we've certainly provided to you in our written materials an area map, and we've had a lot of discussion of what the neighborhood of Sunset Avenue is about. But what I want to start with is zooming in on the two lots in question. So if you look at that first handout that we gave you, it's a blow-up of a tax map. And what you see across the page is Sunset Avenue, and below Sunset Avenue, you see the two lots at issue here. The one that's numbered 107902 is the O'Neill home, which they've owned since the 1980s, and it's the large white house if you've been out to visit the site. And the property next to that, 108897, is 73 Sunset, which Mr. and Mrs. O'Neill bought in 2013, and that's the lot for which a variance is now sought to allow parking in the front yard. So this map really shows the essence of what the problem is that the applicants are trying to seek relief from. And it fairly cries out for a variance because look at how small these lots are. Each of them has 50 feet frontage and is approximately 130 feet deep. That's 6,500 square feet these lots are. Now, we know that these lots are in an R20,000 zoning district where the minimum lot area is 20,000 square feet. The minimum frontage is 100 feet, twice as much as what is presented here. And the zoning now requires a 20-foot side yard, whereas this particular lot has a little over 10 feet. So how did this come about? Well, this nonconformity came about because these lots were created. In fact, all the lots in this neighborhood were created by a map filed on August 23rd, 1912. Long before there was zoning. It's actually filed map 840, and I don't know what filed map we're up to now in the Dutchess County Clerk's Office, but it's in the thousands, and this is filed map 840. So all the lots in this subdivision, and I've looked at the subdivision map, were 50 or 60 feet wide and approximately 130 feet deep. Now, what happened is that some people were lucky enough to buy two lots, some parcels even three lots, so they're fortunate to have a much more compliant lot that gives them frontage to have flexibility to be able to develop their property better. But many of the, for example, the Walsh's lot right across the street from the O'Neills is a double lot, and you can see the multiples of they're either 100 feet wide, 100, these lots are 50 or 60 feet wide, but you can see that it's all in multiples of that because on the original map, all the lots were very small. So some of the lots are double and they're able to cope, but many of the lots remain just as they were created, 50 feet wide and 130 feet deep. So I think that this board is fully familiar that under the zoning law, these lots were lawfully created and they continue to function as lawful lots, even though they're non-conforming, and they're used for lawful residential purposes. But the problem that was created for the O'Neills is that the law that forbids parking in the front yard was enacted in 2007, almost 100 years after the lots were created. So the bigger lots in the neighborhood, those that by good fortune happen to be 2 or 3 of these subdivision lots, don't really have too much problem coping with it because they can easily get to the rear of the property and they have a larger mass of property. But for the smaller lots, the lots that remained as they were created, it's a big problem. First of all, the lack, and again, this is something that we've set forth in our application, the lack of the side yard, a 10-foot side yard makes it very difficult. It's a pinch point for getting the driveway to even get to the backyard. And then, of course, with these very small lots, there's not even enough room once one gets to the backyard to be able to have the parking. So we're going to talk tonight about the 5 variance standards and the general balancing test, and you're all familiar with that, so we're going to be talking about substantiality, all those factors. But I want to emphasize at the beginning that it really all comes down to the size of the lot, the narrowness of the lot. This is sort of the classic practical difficulty for those of you who've been on the board for a long time, that this is something, the basic problem is caused by the size of the lot. In fact, I'll mention briefly that Bill and Gail received an area variance from this board back in 2001 to enlarge their home. And their lot is just about the same size. And among the findings that this board made in 2001 were that the granting of a variance is very much in character with the existing neighborhood, and that there was no viable alternative to a variance because the lot is an existing narrow lot, as are most lots in this neighborhood. So there's a history of this board recognizing the nature of this neighborhood and a neighborhood character that's been formed over the last 100 years. So with that as background, I'm going to now turn it over to Rodney to talk about the character of the street, the character of the neighborhood, and the important issue under a variance of whether there's a practical alternative that's possible for the owners to pursue other than having a variance.
All right, thank you. And looking around the board, I know the town staff, but I don't know any of the members. So just briefly, I've been living here since 1993, working in Poughkeepsie. My firm that we founded 11 or 12 years ago has been here. So I've been a member, I've been in the community. We know the neighborhoods. We've done a lot of work on various projects throughout the area, both myself and our staff. So just as a point of a little bit of background, let the board know that we're very familiar with the areas. When we were asked to look at the property, it was about 20 below, I think, the first day we were up there. We walked along the street where our firm is working, like I said, in the immediate area. So we found that there were some things that stood out that were fairly compelling. Originally, when I looked at this, and you'll see it in our report, we looked at an initial alternative of what do you have to build if you're going to build parking in the back by standards that are acceptable, contrasted with parking in the front. And that's just, again, it's in the report. I won't spend much time on it, but it's over 2.5 times more pavement that has to be introduced, or hard surface that has to be introduced, in essence, into the backyard, which would run off somewhere. We also felt too that, again, with that kind of obvious fact, the character, as Jennifer's characterized how these lots have evolved and people have built on these lots over years, in particular, the first exhibit that's attached here, the tax map, as Jennifer pointed out, the O'Neill's lot and their lot immediately abutting to it. What was significant to us in looking at the rear of the property is that you have a home that's been assembled from, I think, looks like three different lots. It's the rear lot. It's identified as 099893. That lot is very different in character than the subdivision probably originally contemplated. What happens, and I tried to show this graphically rather than try to describe it in paragraph, towards the rear of my report, it's Exhibit B, when we look at what might happen, and I'll go to the larger 11 by 17s in a moment, which is also in there, is if we were to build the necessary area in the back of the property, it would end up taking what's green space from three neighbors. And I did this by forming a circle. It's almost like a triangle. I couldn't quite describe what it was, but what it does is it takes their backyard living space, their space that doesn't have cars in it, and introduces vehicles into that area. And of all the things we've looked at, we felt that was a very compelling reason to really consider not putting parking in between the house and the historic garage or the barn. So if I can set our report aside and just walk briefly through the 11 by 17s that you have up there. As Jennifer mentioned, the first one, the street and area map, which is out of Cuddy Fader's original submission, shows the subdivision as it's been built out. There's obviously Sunset Avenue, then Fairview Avenue extension, and the compilation of lots, a lot of which over time have evolved to have parking in the front yard. The street, I'm going to characterize it as a casual street. It just seems to be the term I've been using today, that has no formal sidewalks. The road surface is 18 to 22 feet wide, so it's fairly narrow. So anything that happens when you leave your home happens in that pavement. You don't have a sidewalk to walk on. So if you're going to bike, if you're going to take off and go running, if you're going to visit, anything has to happen. It happens in that front yard, by and large, except for a few of them at this point. I think that's an important point we might come back to a little bit later. Sheet 2 of what you have just shows what Jennifer described as a narrow passageway to the rear yard. There's a graphic on there of 10 feet wide. That's from the edge of the building. That's what we would have to pave. There's only another foot, maybe a foot and a half to the actual property line. And again, as we've stated, and I put it in here as a bullet points, there are concerns there, certainly from us, if there's a vehicle there. If you need to get by it, if there's a person walking around the corner, it's a conflict of person vehicle, which you can't overcome in that width. Again, attached to that same image is my Exhibit A from the report, showing the area in front that seems most reasonable to place the parking. Sheet 3 shows a photograph of the rear yard. It shows one portion of it, but what you get from that picture in the upper left-hand side is the back of the building, the residence. The gravel area you see is where there used to be pavers and brick and so on, which would go back to a lawn area. And you can see how close the house is off to the left. And again, my picture below, you have in very close proximity the lawn yards, the living space yards of three residences that would be impacted if that area had paving in it, had vehicles in it, lights, noise, mechanical sounds, and so on. So, the next sheet shows two photos of the property. One is with the parking in the front of the property, as it is now. It's well constructed. Vehicles are well off that paved surface, so anybody who parks there does not create conflict in the street itself with the passerby, either pedestrian or other car. It doesn't narrow down the travel, which is the only way to get through. The other photo shows just an example of what on-street parking begins to do in any street. I live on a street much like this, where if you have kind of an ad hoc ability to park on the street, if 3 or 4 cars are parked there, you're going to go visit, they're doing it, you're going to park there as well. What it starts to do from the first car is it starts to very much narrow down your ability to get by. So you compress this conflict of a pedestrian, a person on a bicycle, like I said, a runner, 2 vehicles coming at each other. Very often, it happens, the picture that Jennifer's handing out is another photo. It didn't make it into our materials officially, so you have this one copy of it, but it shows you what happens when someone parks on either side of the road. Astoundingly, people do that a lot. So you're down to, in a 18 or 22 foot, I measured this personally, so the widest width I came up with was 22 feet. So you remove 2 cars from that, and another car, small truck can squeeze by, but certainly no other vehicle of size can do so. So, in general, as a planning comment, in anything that we design, we strongly discourage, again, it's my word, this kind of ad hoc on-street parking. You avoid the hydrants, you avoid people's driveways, but you can still park on the street. And that lack of control of that parking, we don't believe helps a neighborhood function well. Along those lines, to give you something to compare to, just up the street, the last sheet is just an aerial image of West Cedar Street and Fairview Avenue. That particular intersection is just to the south of us, Fairview, with off to the right-hand side, a parking lot for something that Marist has. But you have 2 completely different streets here that are completely different from Sunset Avenue. Fairview Avenue is very wide. I've parked out there many a time for baseball games. It has a lot of distance from the travel lane, the white line, to the edge of the surface that you can park. There's easily 10 feet or so there. So you can park there. It looks like you should park there, and you're out of the travel lane. So West Cedar is what I would call, I use the word casual street for Sunset, is to me a much more formal street. You have sidewalks on either side of the street. You have actual curbing. Pavement width there is 22 feet. So it's similar to Sunset in pavement width, but the fact that you have curbs and sidewalks, it is a very different character. It's a through street for commercial traffic as well. So Sunset Avenue is different to us, to our staff as a planning firm. So that's what the point I'm trying to make, is we identify that as different. And it's of the several things that are our opinions here, one is that on-street parking should be discouraged. We think too, because of that, because of the type of street, that the parking in front of this building is appropriate as opposed to the rear, because we just felt the most respect should be paid to the rear yards and the lawn areas in the back. So.
Thank you, Rodney. I just mentioned one other factor regarding the overall map of Sunset Avenue. It showed, if you look at the aerial, you can see a number of locations where there has been and continues to be parking in the front yards. But I just call your attention again to Exhibit F in our application, which was a diagram that Mr. O'Neill prepared, which shows the great number of lots on Sunset that have parking in the front yard, and that, of course, relates to neighborhood character. So I'll just spend a couple of minutes talking about the applicable standards for area variances in light of the facts that we've discussed tonight. As you know, the overall test is really a simple balancing test of the benefit that would be attained by the applicant in obtaining the variance as weighed against harm, if there is any harm, to the neighborhood by granting the variance. And I think in this case, we submit to you that there really isn't any harm to the neighborhood, because the character of this neighborhood, which has developed over almost 100, well, it actually is more than 100 years now, includes in it a substantial amount of parking in the front yard, primarily related to the size and configuration of many of the lots that are there. So just to go through the 5 factors, and as you know, you are to consider these 5 factors, but it's not a mathematical formula. You don't have to win on all of them, as it were. They're just factors that you consider in applying this overall balancing test. So the first question is, will the variance cause an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood? Again, I think the aerial photo, and I'm sure that you've been out there to take a look at the site, show that, in fact, the parking is very neat. The landscaping will be there. And by the way, the only reason there isn't more landscaping is, of course, a stop work order was imposed, and so the plantings that were an integral part of the project have not yet been placed, but certainly will if and when the board authorizes the variance. So when we look at the character of the neighborhood, I think we have to consider the long history of the prior owners, Mr. and Mrs. Karslak, in parking in the front yard. That was part of our application. That we see a number of lots in the neighborhood that do park in the front yard, that's part of the character. And we believe that these, as Rodney said, this parking arrangement actually does benefit the neighborhood because it provides clearly demarcated parking to get all of the cars, the 4 cars, off the street, and so they're not competing for these on-street spaces. The second factor is whether the benefit can be achieved by any other method than a variance. I think Rodney's covered that thoroughly. There really isn't any practicable alternative of putting parking in the rear. And in our application, we also looked at the possibility of, could we move the driveway to the other side of the lot? But that doesn't work either because there's a bay window over there, so it's just as impracticable. And as we've said in the application, the possibility of conflicting movements with such a narrow driveway, if some car is trying to leave the rear of the lot while another car is trying to go in, creates all kinds of possibilities of accidents. And if one could theoretically have a one-way in on one side of the house and one way out on the other, again, it can't be done because of the bay window and the narrow distance there, but that would create stormwater issues by covering virtually the entire lot and pavement. So the third factor is whether the requested area variance is substantial. Well, certainly it's substantial in the sense that we're asking you to waive 100% of the requirement, but I think that part of the substantiality consideration is remembering that this standard was imposed in 2007, and it's being applied to lots whose perimeter and setbacks were determined 100 years before, so that it's virtually impossible to comply with this standard with what one has. And that's the situation here. And another thing on substantiality is that while the parking law, this parking law section of your code, the 21092, doesn't explicitly exempt previously created lots, Section B of that parking code acknowledges that structures existing at the time of adoption are not subject to the parking or loading requirements of this section. So there is a notion in the parking law, as there is in your zoning in general, that lots that were created prior to the time of a new law going into place should have some special consideration. The fourth factor is whether the variance will have an adverse impact on the physical conditions in the neighborhood. We submit that it won't. There's certainly less land disturbance, as Rodney has pointed out, less stormwater impacts, and less annoyance to neighbors with headlights. The last factor is whether the difficulty was self-created, although this doesn't preclude the granting of an area variance. Well, again, I would submit that the primary difficulty here is caused by the land itself, by the size of the lot that was created back in 1912, the narrowness and the narrow distance between the house and the sideline. We do acknowledge that it's customarily considered to be a self-created hardship when one helps oneself to implementing a project before obtaining all required permits. But I think our application makes clear, and I don't think there really is any question about it, that Mr. and Mrs. O'Neill obtained from the town what they thought was the only permit that they needed for this work and had the work expected. So there really was no knowledge whatsoever that this law had gone into effect, I think primarily because so many of the lots in the neighborhood already had parking in the front yard. So I believe that the zoning board could legitimately find that there is no self-created hardship, but of course, even if you do, I think that's not a bar to obtaining the variance. Now, I'll just spend a moment on talking about the distinguishing the previous decision of this board in 2009, and interestingly, Rodney has shown you that graphic of West Cedar Street, and that's where this board denied a variance to park in the front yard. And I think if you look at this graphic compared to the graphic that we've showed you for Sunset Avenue, you see I've listed a number of factors here, any of which I think is sufficient to distinguish that decision of the board. That case in 2009 on West Cedar Street involved an absentee landlord. In our case, we have a landlord that lives right next door. What was sought in the 2009 case, the landlord already had student housing and was trying to add more student housing so that he would have 6 students in a house. What is sought here is just a simple occupancy of the house with 1 student per bedroom, maximum of 4. It doesn't exceed the population of the house when it was, if it were occupied by a single family. West Cedar Street, as Rodney pointed out, is a through street with sidewalks on both sides. And it's very inappropriate to have parking in a front yard where you're creating conflicts with pedestrian movements on a sidewalk. In the case of Sunset Avenue, the street is narrow, there is no sidewalk, and thus no conflicting movements. In the West Cedar Street neighborhood, you can look at this graphic and see that I could only count 3 lots in the whole street that had parking in the front yard. Whereas on Sunset Avenue, if you look at the overall graphic, a substantial number of the lots have parking in the front yard. And again, those are articulated in Exhibit F of our application. In West Cedar Street, there was no history of past use of the lot in question for front yard parking. But in the case of this particular lot, there's a history of the previous owners of the lot parking in the front yard. You can see also in the West Cedar Street situation that all of the lots are oriented exactly the same way, with the house facing Cedar Avenue, the garage is in the back, so that parking in the back makes sense. But here in Sunset, the lot orientation is very different, and so we have that situation where parking in the rear would be shining lights directly into a residential yard area next door. In the West Cedar Street situation, the board determined that the landlord was actually using the garage on the lot where he was seeking to park for his own personal storage, completely unrelated to the lot in question. On 73 Sunset, the lot is used by the occupants of 73 Sunset to store their things and also for equipment to maintain that house. So it's an integral part of the occupancy of the house. And lastly, the access in the 2009 situation was found to be viable to get to the back. But in our situation, it's not viable because we only have a 10-foot width, and that is obstructed also by the electric meter and an oil delivery spout. So we believe that these factors distinguish the previous decision of the board, and with that, I'll turn it over to Bill to make his summary statement.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to address the zoning board. I think Ms. Van Tuyl and Mr. Morrison have provided a clear description of why we're requesting the variance, but I would like to make 3 brief points as kind of a summary of our application. And the first is to reiterate that we had no idea that a variance was required before I did the work at 73 Sunset. I really thought we had done all that we were required to do. When I went to the Town of Poughkeepsie Highway Department, I got a permit. I had given them a diagram of what I intended to do. I had the work done at a fairly significant expense, and subsequently had the work inspected and approved by the Highway Department. I was unaware of the zoning amendment that had been passed in 2007, and had I been informed of it, I would certainly have come before the board here to seek a variance before doing the work. So I do ask that you consider these circumstances, and when you deliberate, that this not be considered a self-created hardship. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the character of the neighborhood, and specifically Sunset Avenue. My wife, as stated, and I have owned this property since the 1980s, but our family owned the property, many years beyond that, going back into the 40s. But over the time frame that we have owned the property, this street, like many others in the area, have become inundated with Marist College students. And that's unlikely to change because Marist does not have enough student housing on campus, and all juniors and seniors are required to find residence off campus. We live very close to the campus, and so our street becomes a prime spot for that. And I think, as noted in the report, there are more rented properties on Sunset than there are owner-occupied. But I am one of the owner-occupied residences. So I'm not just, it's not just the one house, I live there. And while the student housing issues are complex, I do think that most people would agree that if you own the residence next to the place where the college kids are living, it's more easy to manage it. I purchased 73 Sunset because of that. When the Kozlarks had to move into assisted living, they asked us if we wanted to buy the house, and we did, because I knew it was going to become student housing. I knew college kids were going to be in there, and I know how difficult that can be. And so we purchased it, and better than having an absentee landlord. But I do believe we can coexist with these students, because there's three things that we need to control. First is noise, the second is trash, and the third is parking. Now, my tenants, and as Jennifer said, there are only 4, 1 per bedroom, but for the most part, they cause no disturbances. We have a rule that after 11 o'clock, there are no parties, there are no people, there's no noise, and they're very good about that. I'm fastidious about not littering. And so there are no cans, no cups, no bottles, no cigarette butts. And if you went to see the residents, you probably noticed that. And I wish the entire street and perhaps the surrounding areas could be the same. But then there's parking. And this is, I believe, the biggest problem. And you saw the picture in the report and the presentation, and you see what we are providing. Now, absent any accessible and safe parking, students tend to create their own parking spaces, whether that's on lawns or on the street. And my idea was to get the tenants off the street. The lot is very narrow. It doesn't present many viable options. I think Mr. Morrison has talked about the impracticality of using the rear of the yard for parking. But I would like to focus on the inappropriateness of parking on the street itself, because it is a very narrow street. And as a matter of fact, if you've seen the 2 cars there, those are my cars. I park them there specifically. And if you try and drive through that, I challenge many of the older people on that street to be able to get through. But more importantly, if there is a fire engine or, an ambulance that needs to get through, they're not going to make it through. And that's what kids do. When there's no other place to park, they'll just park on the street, and they'll create that and won't think twice about it. I respectfully disagree with my neighbor, Mr. Walsh, who several months ago spoke and objected my preventing on-street parking. As a matter of fact, I think I've really done him a favor because several people do park near his house. When his family come over, he has a very large family, they park on the street. But no one can park on my side of the street, so there is easy access through the street. And my final point is concerning the neighborhood character and the property values of Sunset. I would venture to say that I've invested more money into my house over the last dozen years than anybody else on the street. And so I don't want my investment diminished. I do care about the neighborhood and the property values. My wife and I, we landscape, we plant flowers, we try to make the surrounding area attractive. And at 73 Sunset, that's why when I did the parking area, I framed it in the Belgian block. And as you probably saw if you were out there, I put in a brick walk that goes across the front and along the back. I have an area in the front that's mulched that we're going to put flowers and bushes. So we do care about the neighborhood, and I think what we've done has made the neighborhood better, and it's improved the neighborhood's character. And I think most of my neighbors would agree, and I hope you do as well. I do have 4 letters that from my neighbors. One of them is from Ike and Joe Labrito. They are here tonight. I believe they want to talk, so I won't address that. I have 3 others. I believe they're in front of you. Did they get copies of these?
Are the letters?
You have copies of the letters?
Do you have a letter? Do you have copies of
don't
letters?
believe so, no.
Okay, I do have, and I'll read them really quick. One is from Sergio Castillo. He is the owner of the property, the 2 properties that are south of of 73 Sunset, directly the next residence, and you can see it on the diagram. He says, I am the owner of 71 Sunset, the property immediately south, the O'Neill property at 73 Sunset Avenue. The construction of the parking areas in the front of that residence was done tastefully, and it keeps students from parking on the street. I support this approach and ask the zoning board to approve Mr. O'Neill's request for the parking. They have once again improved their property and helped make the neighborhood look nice. Their efforts help keep our property values up and make it easier for people to drive on the street. Thank you for your time and consideration. The next letter is from Joseph Sparacino. Joe lives across the street, directly across the street from 73 Sunset at 72 Sunset. He writes, I live across the street from 73 Sunset Avenue, a house owned by Bill and Gail O'Neill. As with many houses on Sunset Avenue, they rent the house to Marist College students. The O'Neills are good landlords and have made the front of the house quite attractive with the Belgian block framed blacktop parking areas, brick walkway, and mulched area where they plan on putting bushes. They have made the neighborhood look nice, but more importantly, the parking areas keep the students from parking on the street, which can be a problem. I support the zoning request and ask the zoning board to approve it. And finally, I have a letter from John Sawolski, who owns a couple of houses in the area. He is an absentee landlord and lives in Woodhaven, New York. He writes, I'm writing to support the O'Neill's request for zoning variance at 73 Sunset, town of Poughkeepsie. I own 2 houses in the area, 78 Sunset Avenue and 9 Fairview Extension. The parking area they have created is a good idea and it helps the neighborhood. Students living in this there will have easy to access off-street parking, which is critical because the street is so narrow. The work has been done nicely and should be a positive impact on property values. I ask that you approve their request.
So we'll hand these in.
Okay, good, thank you. Betty, any questions?
I have no questions. They've covered a lot of material.
Indeed they have.
My head is spinning.
Phyllis, do you have anything?
I missed the point about the bay window on the other side of the house.
Yes.
As to not going into that backyard. If you could just talk about that a little.
Sure. Do you have the application in front of you?
Yes.
The original.
If you look at Exhibit J of the application, Exhibit J shows several photographs, and the first one shows the narrowness of the
Yes.
existing driveway. Okay, so turn the page, and the next page shows the other side of the house. And do you see how the bay window sticks out into the, juts out away from the house and towards the lot line, so that, and you see that there's a car park there, and there isn't enough room to put a driveway in there, not to mention which it would destroy the screening between 73 Sunset. Does everybody have this? If not, I can just quickly show you.
You can also see it, see it.
Take a look at
You
it.
can also see the bay window.
This is the driveway side. Right, which we've shown a lot of pictures of. But this is the other side with the bay window.
That's
so
the
it
left
shows
side,
it's very
if
low.
you're facing the house.
Inside.
Yeah, thank you.
So see that next photo there?
Mm-hmm.
Right there.
Okay.
That's the bay window.
Yeah, I found it.
And how far is, I'm sorry to interrupt you, how far is the lot line from the house? You know, like I get the natural screening, but how far are we?
It's about the same distance, 10 or 11 feet. I believe that the text of our application actually referred to that, but you can see here that there's a fence and the trees here. So if you compare these two distances, you know, the house
They're
would
about
be
the same.
centered on the lot, right?
Okay.
And then plus it has the bay window. So if anything, there's probably slightly less room here, especially where the bay window juts out into the side lot. Pretty similar.
It's about 4 feet, you mean the bay window
From the
itself?
bay window
Yeah, it's a
to-
bay window, oh,
Oh, the bay
bay window
window
itself is
sticks
4 feet.
out, but how far
Oh.
would be the distance from here to here? It's pretty much the same as the other side.
A little
Right.
less, a
About
little
10
less.
A little less?
Right.
A little less.
Okay,
That's right.
no further questions.
Okay, Christine?
No questions.
Okay. My major concern about this application is the item that says that the zoning board should not grant variances if there's an alternative means of obtaining the same benefit without a variance. And so I'm pretty skeptical, in fact, of the argument that the driveway on the north side is too narrow. Okay, and here are my reasons. One, first of all, it was a driveway, so historically it has been used as a driveway. Second, according to my measurements and calculations, you have about 10 feet. And actually, if you could push it a little bit closer to the property line, but let's say 10 feet. Our code requires that driveways be no less than 8 feet or more than 15 feet. So 10 feet clearly falls within what the current code requires. I also note that the standard parking space is 9 feet by 18 feet. If you go into a mall parking lot, you have to drive between two lines that are 9 feet long. There is an exception, however, and that's that if a parking space is bounded by walls or columns, in that case, the parking space must be 10 feet by 18 feet. So a width of 10 feet is clearly considered drivable. So I'm really not persuaded that the driveway couldn't be used. Okay, the next question then is what is the benefit here? And clearly the benefit is having 4 parking places. Why 4? The town code requires at least 2, but it sets no maximum. But why in this case do we need 4? Seems to me if we only needed 2 parking places, maybe there wouldn't be an issue here.
Well, we have 4 tenants, and they have 4 cars. I mean, these are college kids, they each have a car. They're living off campus, they have a car. So
Well, but they're within walking distance of the campus.
Right, and I guess we could tell them that, if you have a car, you have to find another place to park it. But this way, I give them a place to park. I mean, there are 4 cars there all the time. So if I didn't have the 4 parking places, they'd be parking on the street or on the grass.
Okay, but essentially, the assumption here is that every tenant is entitled to have a car.
Well, I don't know that that's so much the assumption. I think the assumption is that if one doesn't provide parking, and I think even in single-family uses, I mean, teenagers have cars. I think if you look around at single-family homes, you see that people have a lot more cars now than they ever did in the past. So I think the assumption here is if we don't give them
why our
parking-
environment's going to hell, but that's another matter.
Right.
All
But
right.
if we don't provide them parking, then they're going to be a burden to the neighborhood as a whole. And just, again, I don't want to interrupt you in the middle of what you're saying, but historically, it was a driveway. Well, Mr. Kozlak, who the O'Neills knew for decades, built this sort of ramshackle driveway out of old brick. But when he attempted to use it, he hit the house several times with his car and ended up parking in the front. And while I grant you that a careful driver, you know how hard it is to get into those spaces when they're bound by columns. You have to be very careful in those parking garages, right? Well, if you're a student, it's possible that people who weren't exercising the highest levels of care could have conflicting movements or accidents, or might give up and say, this is too hard, I think I'll just park on the street. So I think that's the thinking behind it, and it's not to luxuriate in parking, certainly, or be excessive. I think it's sort of a frank realism and a concern of not burdening the neighborhood with more problems of student parking. And I think the photographs that we added to, that were part of our application, I think it's Exhibit G, just photos taken on any random day, and you're all welcome to stop at Sunset Avenue on any random day and see the types of creative or casual, you said casual streets, casual parking engaged in by students. So I think it was considered more a service by Bill to assure that those same students weren't burdening his lot next door and other lots in the neighborhood. So that was the idea.
Okay. Let me follow this up because, and I guess these questions are for Mr. Morrison. You did look at a scenario of providing parking places to the rear of the building.
Yes.
And you came up with the conclusion that it would require 1,746 square feet.
Yes.
In the back, and that includes the driveway up to it.
Includes a 10-foot driveway, 4 parking spaces, and a turnaround. So we drew it in a computer program.
Okay.
This blob, if you will, is just a shading on top of what we actually drew to dimensional scale.
Okay, so I was going to ask how you determined the size of that parking area.
The parking area is determined by taking the town's parking space size, which you mentioned, using a 10-foot driveway, and pulling the car in, backing it up, and having it go out.
Okay,
So,
by my calculation, the square area is 30 feet by 30 feet.
well, you have 9 times potentially 4,
That'd be 36.
36. And then they have, if they're 18 feet deep, you need about that, a little bit less to back up and
Okay.
turn around.
I don't think you made it big enough.
Oh, it's when you put that in there and you look at, and again, I was talking about opportunity of what fits best in these lots. You end up putting machinery filling that entire backyard, which could be lawn, which is connected to the neighbor's lawn. That was part of my
But I
point.
think what the chairman is saying is that perhaps your drawing is underscaled, right? You're saying it's
Yeah.
not accurate. It's
If you-
underrepresenting
if you've
the
got
amount of
4
the
cars
street,
parked,
Yeah,
side
they
by
have
side,
they have to
and
do
I-
what they're supposed to do.
and I presume they'd be facing south.
They would face south, that's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
well, 4 times 9 is 36.
Yep,
And-
36.
And if I read the scale right, this is 30 feet.
The
And-
scale in the
and-
drawing,
and-
yes.
And I wasn't
Yeah.
able to figure out where you came up with 1,746.
It's from our AutoCAD picture, which is drawn to scale. So that's where it comes from. Yep.
Okay,
It's,
I couldn't reproduce it, but I will take your word for it.
Well, we'd be happy to recalculate it manually if you'd like to see.
And I have the drawing, honestly, so we could submit that if you'd like.
Okay,
They have to do what they're supposed to do. They have to, it has to be a regular car, and that's how we, design the smallest spaces, even though, setting aside, of course, we don't have the town requirement for width of a parking lot like we would in the commercial projects in Poughkeepsie. You literally bring a car into it, back it up, and send it back out.
yeah, okay. Larry?
Does the existence of the parking spaces allow you to charge a higher rent than other comparable properties that don't have parking spaces?
I don't believe so. I pretty much charge what the going rate is for the students, but I don't believe, I don't charge more for off-street parking. I don't know that that's a factor in anybody else's.
Anything else? No. Anthony?
How are you? This is questions for the applicants. How did you know to go to the highway department for a street opening permit?
I was told that if I had any road cut, I had to get approval by the highway department. And so I went to the town. The gentleman who was doing my property, who was doing the blacktopping and the subsurface work, told me I had to do that. So that I went and asked, and they told me, yes, you need a permit, and said, come back with a drawing. So I did, and that's what happened.
All right, thank you.
Carmen?
Yes, a couple of questions, excuse me, for the applicant. First of all, what is stored in the garage? It's things that belong to the students?
Well, no, I allow students to put things in there, everything from hockey equipment to luggage to things of that nature. But I keep in there the tools that I work with around the house, and
I think you said ladders, stuff like that.
I have ladders in there. I have a wash, what do you call it, a bucket, a rolling bucket, and
There's a second
Mops.
story there, correct?
in the
In the garage?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
second story in the garage.
Oh, second story. Oh.
It's a loft, and there's really nothing up there. There's some windows and things like that, spare windows, screens and things. But basically, there's nothing up there.
Right. I guess what I'm getting to is if there is some storage in this existing garage, maybe there could be storage for a car there. Wouldn't that be wild? To put a car in
Storage
there?
for a car? Well, it's a very, very narrow door.
I see that.
And it's it's not very long, but a car does fit in there. The previous owner put his car in there once in a while. But yes, it is a garage that was built for a car. It was very small.
Right.
And
They could do
but
a
I'm not-
lottery, 4 students and one gets the garage,
yeah. In all fairness, and I just say this, respectfully, I've been renting to students for some time now. They will take the easiest way available. If I suggest that they park in a garage that is that narrow and that difficult to get to, that will happen very rarely. I believe if we had parking in the back, that the first time that they have problems getting in or out, they'll park wherever. That's just the nature of young people.
You think so?
I
Okay.
tried to make it easy for them. That's what I did there. And if it's a little bigger or I did it so that they would park there. And you know what? They park there. And they park there good. They're neat. They had no accidents, no problems. So that's why I did it. It just makes all the sense in the world.
Right.
I realize that people don't want to have students living in their neighborhood, but they do, and they're going to be there, and we can't stop them. So let's do things right and make it neat and make it look nice and give them places where they will park, you've seen the pictures and drive down the street and everybody else on that street, not everybody, many people on that street, they just let the kids park anywhere and you're going around like this. There have been days when I've driven down there where I can't get through. And God help us if we have another fire like they had on Fairview and you can't get through with a fire truck. So I'm trying to do the best I can do. I like the neighborhood. I like where I live. I'm just trying to make it nice. And, I've done everything that I was asked to do, and I think I've done it pretty nicely. And I just hope that you appreciate that, because...
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I still
Sorry,
have a
Carmen.
few things
I didn't realize you were just getting going. All right.
Just started. No, there was a question about the lights. If cars were parked in the back, that the lights would offend the neighbors. Well, I maintain that when these cars come home, when these people come home at night, that the people across the street are going to have lights. They're going to see some lights as well. And some of the cars are parked facing out and some are parked facing in. So
Most of them pull in.
Pull in.
Easy access.
Okay.
The easy way to get there, that's what they do.
Right. You folks have made some really great arguments. I just found that one a little bit iffy there.
Ma'am, one of the letters I have here that you'll see is from Joseph Sparacino. He lives directly across the street. So.
Okay. And of course, when this lot was created, there were cars, I guess, but not too many cars. This is just a whole different world we're living in. But which leads me to the next point, which is we're talking about the character, and you kind of maintain that this is the character of the neighborhood, and until the town decides that this is going to be the character of certain parts of the neighborhood, I just have some reservations about approving this, and that's about it.
Ma'am, can I just say one thing in that regard? The town has made a decision about the character of the neighborhoods that have student housing. They have passed a law that says 5 unattached people can live in a house. That law was passed directly because of students. So they have made the law regarding the character of neighborhoods. That's already been done. That doesn't have to be done.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we weren't making the argument that, oh, well, that's it, that's the character of the neighborhood, no one cares. I don't think that's the tenor of the position at all. I think our position is that it is not an aberration to have one more house with parking in the front yard when the lot is 50 feet wide in an area where you look at, you do impacts on neighborhood character in virtually every area variance, right? And so you look and you say, is there anything like this in the neighborhood now, or is this introducing something never before seen? And I think that all we're saying is that the addition of a lot with parking in the front yard is not an aberration from the character of the community, because there are many, many, many houses that have organized, I'll call it organized parking in the front yard. And then there are others that we've shown the photos that have kind of chaotic, non-planned parking in the front yard. But I don't think, I hope that you don't construe anything we said as being cavalier. I think that the effort that Bill and Gail have put into doing this nicely and putting it in a place where, unfortunately, your site visits have taken place before the landscaping could be done, that I think will, and if you had been able, and unfortunately, I know it's taken us a long time to actually get here, but all of it was in the season of the fall and the winter and the spring, but we did include one photograph, and I know I stopped to see the O'Neill house last fall, and the landscaping is beautiful. It really is.
It's really beautiful, but I have to say, I thought it was rather ironic. The first time we went out there, we're looking at the driveway to the right of the house, and trying to figure out if the driveway was wide enough, and then we put cars could be parked in the back. And when we went out there recently, last week, there were plantings, very pretty. I mean, there was hosta and I think it was peonies planted there, and they look like they've been recently planted.
They were.
Yeah, yeah. So, you've done some nice things, but I think this was also, I certainly got the message that you could not use this as a driveway.
If I could just add
Yep.
one, maybe more technical planning-ish kind of comment, is that it's not just students intermingling with people who own the houses. We all face, if we want to buy a beautiful house that's on 6,500 square feet and it's got 4 bedrooms, somebody like myself with too many kids are gonna. I'm living that. I've ended up with 4 cars in my driveway as the parent. So the houses, when these were contemplated, it's a great setting with the garage offset to the back, the house in the front. When the subdivision was designed and these houses were built, even decades later, people usually had a car. The parent drove, the father drove at that point, and they had kids, but everybody lived in a much closer space. We all lived differently. We would face the same problem on a lot that's, like I said, it's 6,500 square feet, it's 50 feet wide. The code with 2 20-foot side yards in an R20 zone doesn't leave you much, working room. So we all function differently. And I certainly didn't mean to say anything because I think it has a lot of great bones to the neighborhood, and as many neighborhoods in Poughkeepsie do. So, but it's a problem we all face, whether it's students or a family contemplating buying the house.
We're all just too reliant on cars,
Right.
unfortunately, and everybody has to have their own car because they have a different
And
schedule.
I understand
than
that. And if you were to utilize the garage as a parking space for a car and put the cars, three cars out and back, you know what? It would be real inconvenient for those students. I mean, the jockeying of the cars and the first one out, that sort of thing. But my point is that it's doable. And I just question your theory, too, that there is existing front yard parking in the neighborhood. But that kind of really says that they're all out of compliance, too. So
I don't think that anyone is out of compliance if the parking was put in before 2007. The law didn't exist before 2007, 100 years after these lots were created. And by the time the law was enacted, all these other areas of front yard parking had been established. So anyone seeking to put parking in the front yard after 2007 is compelled to come before you to seek a variance, but
Right.
and that's why we're here.
okay, those look fairly recent to me. I mean, that's 7 years ago. but-
Yeah.
Okay. No further questions.
Okay. Anyone else on the board?
One last question. Where do you stockpile the snow?
That's what I've been saying.
Well, this year,
Yeah,
I was able to put it on that area that is between where the brick walkway is and and my driveway. In previous years, we tried to get it on the 4-foot, corridor between the 2 driveways. And so, and given the fact that my neighbor was 80-some years old, I did his driveway. So I would go back and forth until I could get it piled up onto 4 feet.
In between.
Which was another reason why it made no sense to have 2 driveways there with snow. And this year, with the snow, I don't know what I would have done. And it's a good point with students because I then have to plow their driveway or expect them to do it And if they don't do it and they're driving out, in and out on snow, then they're definitely going to hit the house.
Okay.
So did you have to plow beyond the rear of the house this year in order to put the snow back there? You had to,
Well, my driveway
no, for this
on
house.
75. But this house, no, I just did the
walk.
2 parking areas.
And the walk.
And then I did the walkway, so you could get to the back door. But that was it.
So
So
when you
you-
say
you
the
have to-
parking areas, you mean the front of the house?
The parking area is in the front of the house.
Yeah.
But I didn't go beyond the front of the house.
And then to plow to the back of the house, because there's a door back there, you have to shovel anyway, I guess, right?
Well, I snow blowed the
Just the
brick
path?
walkway that's next to the house so that there was a corridor to get to the back. But I didn't do that drive area. I just did that walkway. And it's a little easier when you have the pavement as opposed to the dirt.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address this application? Yes, please come forward.
We'll leave the
Okay.
area here.
Good evening. If you'd
Good
each
evening.
state
Good
your
evening.
name.
Take one and pass it.
My name is Josephine Librado, and I live in Sunset Avenue, 77 Sunset Avenue.
And my name is Nicasio Librodo, and I live in 77 Sunset Avenue.
Okay.
Mr. and Mrs., I'm assuming Labroto, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please be advised that you are under oath and any false statements made by you are subject to perjury pursuant to the laws of the state of New York.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Bill and Gail had been our neighbor for 24 years, and I just wanted to tell you what kind of a neighborhood we have. When they say Sunset Avenue, this is Marist Kids. And it's a very nice neighborhood. Bill had been very nice to us when we first moved in there. They're good neighbors. They maintain their house, and they even help us. I live in the only house in the neighborhood that has a very long driveway in the back. And I'll tell you, it's not easy. And if I can just park my car in front of my house, I would do that. And for me to get out and have it plowed, it's very tough. Bill and Gail had maintained this neighborhood, even giving service to the other people, like, the old owner of that 73 Avenue, and also in front, even Mr. Waltz, he does the plowing of the snow. What I'm trying to tell you, they are good neighbors. They maintain the house. And practically, we got a lot of students. But let me tell you, even though we have a lot of students, they're very good. They're quiet. In fact, I have more noise that I heard from those metal scrap company that does the recycling at 6:30 in the morning than all the students here that lives in my neighborhood. And we're very lucky that they have these tenants there, and they're right there. If there's any issue with the students, they're right there. They tell them, this is it, this is the law, this is what we need to do in the neighborhood. You cannot have noise, you cannot have parties. And for them to give all this convenience and for the safety of the students and the safety of the neighborhood, sometimes when the oil company comes to my house, sometimes if their cars park on either side of the street, they have to move the car or they have to come back just to deliver the oil. That street is really very narrow. And the way they do with that parking, when I saw that, it's awesome. It's clean and it's neat and it's really well spaced with the car. And you're asking why there are 4 parking lots. There are four people, 4 students. You cannot tell them to walk because they're near Marist. Who would do that, But during the winter, during this rainy, I don't think anybody, these people also goes to do groceries and everything. This is just for the convenience of the students and also for the neighborhood. So these are the only things I want to point out to each and every one of you, that we are there after the safety. You know, even though we have students, there are also families there. You know, there are also single family there in the neighborhood, and they're trying to maintain the integrity of the neighborhood. That's all I can tell you. And thank you for considering their variance, and it's really helpful for us.
Okay, thank you.
I would say something?
Yes.
Can I say something? I've known Bill and Gail for the last 20 years.
24.
Well, more than 20 years, but to tell you the truth, I really admire them, their character. They're so very nice, very helpful, very considerate of the neighbors. They think. In fact, Bill is my idol. I believe in him, I admire him, I really, really admire him for, and now he's a new grandparent, and
And we just have to tell you that we are
we raised 2 children in my house, a pharmacist and a accountant and a programmer. They're now both in San Francisco, and we are blessed to have this house on us because of this. The neighbor is so good. We've never had problem. More especially, Bill is there now. He's decided to get tenants, and now he's planning to have it under his control and under his watch. I think everything will be fine. So please, please give him the variance he's seeking. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that wishes to address this application? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And there's one recusal. Okay, I think they went around.
They went around.
Numbers of copies?
Yeah.
We do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's item 1. We've adjourned to. Yeah. And Art Grace can rejoin us. The next item number 3, Phil Fortuna, 318 Chief Road. Good evening. Thank you for your patience. If you just state your name into the microphone, you can have a seat there. Yeah.
Philip Fortuna?
Mr. Fortuna, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please be advised that you are under oath, and any false statements made by you are subject to perjury pursuant to the laws of the state of New York.
Okay, so briefly, you're looking for a variance to build a new garage.
Yes, I am.
Okay. And if I understand, and correct me if I've got this wrong, there's an existing garage which will be taken down
Yes.
and a shed.
That shed is not there.
Oh, that's gone
There's
already.
That was on the plans when we bought it. There's a temporary garage back there, but not that shed.
Okay. And I wasn't quite clear. The new garage is going to be attached to the house?
Yes, we want to take the new structure and put it right, attach it to the house so there's an entryway or access from the house to the garage.
Okay. And how far from the property line is the current garage?
About 12 foot, the old plan says.
Okay. And so the new garage is actually going to be slightly further away.
Yeah, 15, almost 16 feet.
Okay. Betty, any questions?
I have no questions.
Art?
No questions.
Christine?
No questions.
Larry?
No questions.
Anthony?
No questions.
Carmen?
Just one question about when the if the two-car garage is constructed, are you going to have some place for storage there? Because you have quite a bit of storage, outside storage right now.
So the garage is going to be 40 by 50, so it's almost a 4-car garage. And there is going to be a second floor for some storage and
Right.
possibly a workshop.
You know what I'm talking about, the existing, there's a fence there and there's storage behind that.
That's part of the driveway, though. That's not a storage. I mean, it's,
There was
Well, there's some equipment
out
and
there.
materials that are outside,
okay,
and those you'll be able to then put inside.
yes.
You will. And the siding on the garage, will that match the house?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Okay, if there are no other questions from the audience, or is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address this application on Shape Road? Okay. If not, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Recusals? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 4, Jason and Monica Langevin, 9 Monroe Drive. I may not have pronounced that right. I don't, is it?
Langevin, close enough.
Okay, a little closer to the French version. Okay. Okay, so if you just state your names for the record.
Monica Langevin.
Jason Langevin.
Mr. and Mrs. Langevin, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Yes.
Please be advised that you are under oath, and any false statements made by you are subject to perjury pursuant to the laws of the state of New York.
Okay, so why do you need a variance?
We want to put an above-ground pool in our backyard. And the way our backyard is set up, we have sort of, on the right half is basically our septic, well, right in the center is basically our septic tank. And then on the right side is all of our leaching fields. So we do not want to go over the top of leaching fields or in where the septic tank is. So we're asking for a variance from the 15 feet from the property line.
Okay, so, and according to the map, I believe what it's going to be 7 feet from the rear line and 7 feet from the side.
Correct.
Okay. Art, any questions?
No questions.
Betty?
No questions.
Christine?
No questions.
Okay. Larry?
No questions.
Anthony?
No questions.
Carmen?
No questions.
Whoa.
Hey,
Boy, this is
we actually
the
made it quick for you guys.
clearest application we've had tonight. Thank you.
We're already worn out.
Okay, anyone from the audience that wishes to address this? Okay, if not, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Recusals? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you
That's
very
it.
much.
Item 7, Robert and Jan Carroll, 13 Sheraton Drive. Okay, good evening. You just each state your name and be sworn in.
I'm Jan Carroll.
Robert Carroll.
Mr. and Mrs. Carroll, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Please be advised that you are under oath, and any false statements made by you are subject to perjury pursuant to the laws of the state of New York.
Okay, and you're here for a variance for a back deck?
Yes.
Okay. And is it for the existing deck, or are you building a new one, or?
It's an existing deck. What happened is I went to the building department to get a permit, and they took my check and instantly said, nope, you need a variance. Because the entire property is non-conforming now based on the 2007 changes to the law. So we went from an R10 to an R20 and need your relief to take care of our property.
It's an existing deck that we're in the process of redecking.
Okay, okay. And the footprint for the new deck is going to be the same as the old one?
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay, so it really, same distances from the lot lines?
Yeah, it was one of
and
those
everything.
fun days. Surprise, your house needs to move 2 feet. which, by the way, isn't going to happen.
Okay. Art, any questions?
No, I don't see any big impact on this one.
Okay. Betty?
No question.
Christine?
No questions.
Larry?
No question.
Anthony?
No questions.
Carmen?
No questions.
Okay.
Thank you very
We're on a
much.
roll. Thank you. Okay. Anyone from the audience that wishes to address the application at 13 Sheridan Drive? If not, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Recusals? Okay. Richard and Teresa Pacheco? Okay. At 3 Sugar Maple Road. Okay. Okay. You can just have a seat, and if you'd each just state your name into the microphone and be sworn in.
Teresa Pacheco.
I'm Richard Pacheco.
Mr. and Mrs. Pacheco, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Absolutely, yeah.
Please be advised that you are under oath and any false statements made by you are subject to perjury pursuant to the laws of the state of New York.
Okay, so you want to briefly explain what it is that you'd like to do?
Well, we have a fence, which is very old now. It's starting to rot away. And I want to get a new fence in the same place. Of course, the plastic fence. And they told me I needed to get a variance.
Actually, Lowe's. It was Lowe's. Lowe's that came in to apply for the permit. They came back and said we needed a variance.
Okay, okay. Do you know why it is you need a variance?
Yes, I think so.
They said we're supposed to be 30 feet from the road, and I believe we're 20 or 24.
Okay. According to the application, the reason you need a variance is that you're looking for a 6-foot fence.
That's what I have now.
Okay, but it's because you're on a corner, you have 2 front yards.
Right.
Okay, and the ordinance, the current town ordinance says that in front yards, you can only have a fence that's 3.5 feet in height. And so the reason you're here for the variance is because you're asking for a taller fence.
6 feet.
Yeah.
6 feet high.
And that's the size.
That's what we have now.
Okay, yes. All right, from the drawing that you submitted, it wasn't clear to me where the fence was going to be located.
Same location.
Same exact location as the old fence. Just rip that one down and put the new one.
Okay, and it's through all of the trees that are there.
Well, there's no trees there, but
No
yeah.
trees, It's not going through trees.
I think he's not talking about what we thought was the front yard, Jim. Remember? I think it's around by your pool
The
area,
trees that you're
correct?
talking about, that's like in the back behind
Yeah.
us.
Okay.
That's not weaving in between. And we still have some property there.
Right, but the fence is going to be on the side of the house nearest Vassar Road.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right,
Which technically is a front yard because he's on the corner.
right,
That's-
right, okay,
I didn't either.
okay. Like I say, it just wasn't clear from the drawing that the
Yeah, I
new
was
fence was
not-
going to
not
go
a
in
drawer.
exactly where the
Yeah.
other one was, okay.
Actually, I have a couple of pictures if you'd like to see them on my cell phone. I don't know if that would help much.
No, that's, I think that's fine. So, Art, you have any questions?
No questions.
Betty?
Yeah, just one. What color is your new fence going to be?
White.
I was afraid of that.
You don't like white?
Well, no, I like white
There's
very
other neighbors
much.
with
It's
white
just that
also.
it's going to stand out so much behind
Everybody.
the nice greenery that you have there, and the color fence that you have now looks natural
That was staying.
down Vassar
I went with
Road,
the
but-
white, to be honest with you. First of all, this fence is already being paid for because Lowe's charged me for an order. To get a color fence, it would cost me another $2,000, which I said, forget it, white. It's going white. But there's
12.
other neighbors there that have a white fence also.
Right, I know that.
Yeah, so it's,
Okay, I have no other questions.
Okay, Christine?
No questions.
Larry?
No questions.
Anthony?
No questions.
Carmen?
No questions.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address this application on Sugar Maple Road? If not, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Recusals? Okay, thank you very much.
Is it approved or?
This is just the hearing. After we've finished the others, we'll come back and we'll do the deliberation.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Item number 7, Patrick Properties, 696 Dutchess Turnpike.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for your patience.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Richard Olson with the law firm of McCabe and Mack. With me tonight is Mr. Damian Patrick, who's the leasing agent with Patrick Properties LLC, which is the management company for the Canterbury Plaza.
Mr. Patrick and Mr. Olson, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please be advised that you are under oath, and any false statements made by you are subject to perjury pursuant to the laws of the state of New York.
Okay, thank you. One thing about this application I can tell you is we have plenty of parking, so we don't have to worry about that issue. The one thing that we don't have are financially viable tenants. I'll just give you a brief summary. We did submit an application. Since 2011, when we lost a tenant that occupied approximately 52% of the square footage of the building, the property has been underwater significantly. I gave you this evening financial information from the company up to the year 2012. 2011 was the last financially viable year. From 2012 on, we have been losing approximately $100,000 a year, not a reasonable return on investment. Attached to that is also the 2 tax bills on the property. The current ones are higher, but these are the bills that we had here. So you can see there's a significant tax burden on the property. So even just to receive a break even, we have to substantially increase the leases on the property. As we have set forth in the application, they have been marketing the property. Currently, there are only, is it 3 or? Three tenants on the property, generating approximately $113,000 in income. Where we have approximately $200,000 in expenses. So I believe that we meet the first test under 267B2, that we have a financial issue on the property not giving us a reasonable return. The structure is unique. The structure has been there since 1972. It was originally built around an anchor tenant years ago, which was Cavo Appliances, which at that time occupied approximately 50% of the space. That worked very well for many years. After they left, they were fortunate enough to have a tenant of Arlington School District, which occupied the building for 16 some odd years. It was only in 2011 when that tenant decided to leave that we wound up with the vacancy issue. We believe, and we set forth in the application, that the proposed use of a vehicle rental facility, which is permitted in your business highway zone, but not your business neighborhood zone, would be less intrusive than the permitted use of a vehicle repair facility. I suppose that if we could find someone right down the street who wanted to move a repair shop there, it's a permitted use, but I don't think that would fit with the character of the neighborhood. The vehicle rental facility is merely an office, and the major storage component they have there are vehicles, and we have a parking lot that would be sufficient to accompany it. It's not a self-created hardship. The property has been there since 1972. It's simply a matter that they cannot find tenants at this point. I'm going to ask Mr. Patrick if he would go through and advise this board of the efforts that he's been making on leasing the facility since the 2011 when the major tenant had left.
Hi, everyone. We have been marketing the property through various means, both through internet, through LoopNet, as well as through public publications, through the Poughkeepsie Journal, and as well as through a freestanding sign that's been on the property with our phone number on it. We've been able to get mediocre tenants in there that we did not find that were financially viable to occupy the space. Some examples of the tenants that we have been soliciting that weren't financially viable were tenants such as a Chinese restaurant, a massage parlor, an internet cafe, all that we did not seem deemed viable financially to occupy the space at Canterbury Plaza. As for Enterprise Rental Car, we feel that they are definitely a viable tenant and can pay for the space and think that they'd be a good fit for the occupancy at the current location.
Can you tell the board the current tenants that do occupy the property?
Currently, we have Carrie's Dance Academy, which is basically a dance school for small children, ballerina and tap. We also have On Location, which is a photography studio that does photography for weddings and various events, and Allstate Insurance are the current tenants we have.
And what are the current monthly rentals for those?
Carrie's Dance Academy is occupying approximately 6,400 square foot and paying $6,400 a month. And Allstate Insurance is paying approximately $1,800 a month and occupying 1,200 square feet. And On Location is paying approximately $2,100 a month and occupying 1,800 square feet.
And that equates out to approximately $113,000 per year gross rentals?
Yes, sir.
The board has any additional questions?
Okay, Art?
Enterprise, they do no repairs at all of their own, right? They send all their cars somewhere else to be repaired, Enterprise?
Yes, sir.
Nothing goes on, you don't refuel there, you don't have any gasoline?
The only thing that they're requesting is a possibility to hand wash the vehicles and vacuum. No
So
oil
no
change,
gasoline, no oil?
nothing of that nature, no.
And the
repair.
washing would be interior.
So what, there would be garage doors so the vehicles could go in?
Yes, sir. They're proposing a small wash bay with inside the building. That might be a application down the road after they move in, but they're actually not looking to service the vehicle in any way, nature, no changing of oil or any of that, just simply hand washing the vehicle from hose and vacuuming the inside to turn it around for a new rental.
What would the hours be of the facility typically?
I believe somewhere around probably 9 to 6, possibly 7 p.m.
7 days?
7 days, yes.
Are they 7 days? Is Enterprise, it might not be. I mean, I'm just saying.
I actually don't know that
The
answer for a
Enterprises near
fact.
me aren't open on Sundays.
Yeah, and they might not be, but
So you're figuring probably no later than 9 o'clock at the latest on a
yeah, I think they close fairly earlier than that. So, and the majority of their business tends to be towards the later hours of the evening.
Okay, no further questions, thank you.
Betty?
Well, I was interested in the part of the application where he stated there were so many uses already in close proximity to all of the allowed uses in the zone. And I went through and made a little notes for myself, like Pastry Garden would take care of the bakery and Panera Bread and et cetera, et cetera. The only use I could not find was a library that was in close proximity. Aside from that, every other use is within a quarter of a mile to a mile. I mean, well, maybe the church is a mile and a half. But at any rate, I couldn't find anything that was allowed in the use that wasn't already there, and in most places more than once. So I guess if I were to look for a place to open a shop, I would certainly not look for anything close to where I already have competition. And in some cases, the best competition in town.
Yeah.
When you talk about Marlene Weber and Adams and, so you certainly have a problem.
Okay, Christine?
No questions.
Okay. I have a couple of quick questions. How many cars will Enterprise want to have out in that lot at any given time.
The way we understand their business is that we are allocating 30 reserved car parking, which is kind of tucked into the front corner of the plaza towards the marquee sign.
Okay.
Which is somewhat dead space for our parking lot in general. But the way that they operate their business is that if they have ever 30 cars at one time sitting at one position, they're not making money. So generally speaking, they have a turnover rate of probably around 12 to 15 cars at one given time.
Okay. Will there need to be a fence or an enclosure or anything for those?
No, we did supply to the board a mock-up, which was done by Mazzarelli Architects, of a conceptual plan. It's really just signage, reserving of particular reserve spaces for the parking of the vehicles, and then non-reserve spaces for, I would assume, the customers as they come in and out.
Okay. Somehow I missed that.
I don't have that either.
None of us
I
have.
don't have that.
Well, it's getting to answer Art's question of the 5, taking away Stewart Airport, the 4 rental agencies within the area. One is closed on Sunday. The rest are all 7:30 to 6, Monday through Friday, and 9 to 1 on Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
7:30 to 6.
Can I?
Sure.
Yeah, as far as lighting, you're going to be parking in the front of the building mainly?
Right, again, could I just bring this up? Sure. We had supplied this to the planning department, the mock-up.
So what type of parking lot, are you going to add any parking lot lighting that might be offensive to the apartments or the people across the street?
The parking lot currently has 2 pole lighting and then some reflective lighting off of the poles that are in the front of the Route 44 sign that reflects down into the parking lot.
So you're going to stay with that?
Yeah, we're going to keep with that. We feel that that's sufficient enough lighting.
We understand that we would have to go through a site plan review, and that would have to be reviewed at the planning board level, but I don't believe there's any indication to add additional lighting.
One last one, I hope. How about PA system to the outside world? Are you going to be having any, type of announcements or anything? People are going to walk in, get their keys, sign their paperwork, go get in their car, right?
Yeah, there's been no speak of any type of PA system outside.
You would have really no need for that, correct?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I must say that when I first got this application, I went to the zoning code and was surprised that, gas stations and repair facilities were allowed, but a car rental was not. And I couldn't quite understand that. And then I went and looked in more detail, and it turns out that one of the things under car rental that's allowed is not just the rental of automobiles, but also of trucks and really all kinds of vehicles. Does Enterprise rent vans and trucks and,
I do believe they have somewhat of a van rental business. That particular use is probably not going to be geared towards our specific location.
Okay.
It's more of just regular everyday vehicles. But I mean, it could possibly
I have
if they
never
have a
seen
van or
heavy
two.
trucks.
Yeah, I don't
in any
believe
Enterprise.
I believe that's a subsection of their rental business, and that's not what we're entertaining. We're just entertaining the basic regular rental car service, which is mainly vehicles.
Okay.
Maybe a van or two, but not any type of heavy trucking or
Okay,
anything.
so would it be all right if there was a condition on this that said that you could rent automobiles and vans, but not heavy trucks?
I don't think that would be an issue at all.
Okay, because as far as I can tell, it was that part of it that I think probably when they were sorting out uses, made that a highway use, and that makes sense. I mean, if you're going to go rent Ryder, for example, you can rent an 18-wheeler. Okay, well, I'm not sure we want those parked there, and I wouldn't like to see that parking lot filled up with U-Haul vans, with the billboards painted on each one of them. Okay, good. Larry?
No questions.
Anthony?
With respect to the billboards, are the cars going to be labeled with anything or advertising? I'm not familiar with them.
I don't believe any of the rental agencies have any advertising on the sides of their cars.
Yeah, I think there's some of the vans just have Enterprise across it, but
I've seen the vans.
yeah, very modest.
Yes.
Thank you.
I just have a question. And again, the parking is going to be determined, decided with the planning board. But you have 3 other tenants there that you listed. So would they basically be parking in the front next to, on the roadside? Because there's a lot of parking also on the side there.
Yeah, we do have a lot of parking on the side, but the way we've more or less corralled Enterprise into that front tucked-in right corner allows us to plow the parking lot efficiently, and at the same time, it doesn't hinder any of the other tenants in the space of the plaza.
So the Enterprise cars would be where? In the front primarily or on the side?
It's coming around.
Coming around to you if you want to take a peek at the proposal, but it's basically tucked into the front corner where the marquee sign is.
Yeah.
So it keeps them pretty much corralled right into that front corner and keeps them away from the rest of the parking lot.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. We got a response from the county, and let me just quickly read it and you comment on it if you want to. The Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development has reviewed the submitted referral for countywide and intermunicipal impacts as outlined in general municipal law. The applicant is seeking a use variance to allow a motor vehicle rental facility, Enterprise Rental, on a property located in the neighborhood business BN district where a motor vehicle rental use is prohibited. We consider the granting of a use variance in this instance to be a local decision. However, if the board is inclined to approve this variance specifically for car rentals, the town should consider requiring upgrades to the parking lot, including installation of landscaped islands and street trees as a condition for the site plan approval. The department recommends that the board rely on its own study of the facts in the case with due consideration to the above comments. Signed, Noella Hooper, Senior Planner.
Well, I believe if you look at the site and where we are planning to have the cars, they're already set down below a fairly significant berm. We don't believe you'll be able to see any of those vehicles parked. I mean, other than the fact that you can see some of the parking lot from the Route 44 right now. And again, we'll be going before the planning board. I would assume if they see any specific concerns, we could address it there.
Fine. Okay. If there are any other questions from the board?
I was just going to give you I'm just looking on their 2 websites for the rent-a-truck and the rent-a-car.
Yeah.
And on the rent-a-car website, they list 3 trucks, a pickup truck, the large pickup truck, and the cargo van. Mm-hmm. And then some of those are also available on the rental truck website, which is the closest location is Waterbury, Connecticut.
Oh.
And then that has box trucks and larger trucks, and that's just so you know there are some.
Yeah, it's the trucks. The cargo van is a standard.
Right.
It's not that's not a huge vehicle, and I'm not concerned about that.
Right. I just want to make sure you don't say no trucks, and then there's a pickup truck or whatever. So.
We
Okay.
could possibly condition it, right, that vans and trucks be parked in the back? Can we do that?
No, that's probably more for the planning board if they're going to do. Honestly, I think for what you're going to see, I have a rental, I pass one of these every day.
Well,
I never see
what we could
except the one.
say is that the use variance is granted for automobiles, pickup trucks, and cargo vans. That would.
There you go. That would
Which are fairly standard for most
rental car
normal
agencies.
household use. I mean, I have a pickup truck at home, but
Well, and it's the kind of things that, folks need from time to time. Rarely do I find a need for an 18-wheeler, but.
Come on, Jim.
Really?
Yeah, right. Okay. So if there are no other questions from the board, anyone in the audience wishes to address this application? If not, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Recusals? Okay, thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
5 minutes?
5 minutes.
A 5-minute recess for refreshment. Whatever.
I'm the worst.
Okay.
Never eat. Oh, sorry.
These pickup trucks, vans.
Yeah.
I told them.
Okay.
But I saw, I, oh, sorry.
Okay.
Recognize what he said.
The board members would
I knew you would.
take their seats so we can get started. Okay, the item number 1.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. And
switch.
You're going to recuse yourself, so Christine, if you, or Phyllis.
I'm sorry. How quickly they forget, huh?
We just got more name
Oh.
tags.
They're not here.
Oh,
They must have walked in.
Oh.
If you want to stay.
okay. And, Art, come back. Okay. Okay, we'll skip item 1, and we'll deal with
No,
the others.
Item 2.
Yeah, so we'll come back and do that at the end. Okay, so item number 3.
Mr. Appointment at the gym.
Okay, two is adjourned, so we're on item 3. Phil Fortuna, 318 Schaeff Road, a variance to allow a proposed 2-story garage to be located 15.8 feet from the side lot line where 20 feet is required. This is a type 2 action, so there's no environmental action that we have to take. In your packet, there's a staff report recommending that we approve this variance. In the staff report, however, on the second page, under item 3, there's a typographical error, and the variance request is not substantial in that the position of the proposed garage will be only, and instead of 4 feet 2 inches, it should be 15.8 feet. It's just a typo. So you have the staff report as corrected.
It's a variance of 4.2.
Yeah, that it's
4.4.
okay. So all right. Any discussion? I think this is pretty straightforward. Betty, you want to make the motion on this one?
Sure. I make a motion to, that's special use permit. I make a motion that the board approve the request for area variance set forth in item number 3. This decision is based on the review of the application, the testimony of the applicant, the testimony offered at the public hearing, the results of site visits by board members, and the staff report. In approving this variance, the board should adopt as findings the determinations found in items 1 through 5 of the staff report, with number 3 amended.
Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, all in favor of approving?
Aye.
All right, opposed, recusals, approved, 7-0. Item number 4, Jason and Monica Langevin. Well, this won't take long, so. 9 Monroe Drive, a variance to allow an above-ground swimming pool to be located 7 feet from the side lot line and 7 feet from the rear lot line, where 15 feet is required for each. A type 2 action, and in your packet, there's a staff report recommending that this variance be granted. Any discussion, comments? Okay.
The rest of the town.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Christine, you want to make the motion on this?
Sure. This one I read?
Oh,
Skipped you anyway, so
Okay. I move that the board approve the request for a variance set forth in item number 4. This decision is based on a review of the application, the testimony of the applicant, testimony offered at the public hearing, the results of site visits by board members, and the staff report. In approving this variance, the board adopts as findings the determinations found in items 1 through 5 of the staff report.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and second to approve the variance at 9 Road Drive. There's no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, approved 7-0. All right. Do we want to go back to item 1, or should we?
Well, we've got these
I
folks.
would do number 6.
Okay, yeah, well, let's just, we've got just a couple more. All right, item number 5, Robert and Janet Carroll, 13 Sheraton Drive. A variance to allow an existing deck to be located 18 feet from the side lot line where 20 feet is required. Again, this is a type 2 action, and in your packet, there is a staff report recommending that this application be approved, and I would just like to amend the staff report under staff recommendation number 1, where it says, would not result in any detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community, period, and then delete the rest of that. I think there's a phrase there that got added in the cut and paste. Okay, Art, you want to make the motion on this one?
Sure. I move, excuse me, I move that the board requests the variance set forth in item number 6.
5.
Don't do that to me. 5. This decision is based on the review of the application, the testimony of the applicant, testimony offered in public hearing, and the results of site visits by the board members and the staff report. In approving the variance, the board adopts its findings, the determinations found in items 1 through 5, with number 1 amended, as Jim just stated.
Okay. Okay, motion been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion of item 5? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Recusals? Okay, the variance is granted. Item number 6, Richard and Teresa Pacheco, 3 Sugar Maple Road, a variance to allow a fence of up to 6 feet in height to be located in a front yard where a fence shall not exceed 3.5 feet. A type 2 action. There is in your packet a staff report that, and again, I would like to amend this. It is respectfully submitted that the applicant has established that granting of the variance would not result in any detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community, period. And then delete the final phrase. Okay.
Number is that under? I'm sorry.
It's the final, this staff recommendation at the
Okay.
very end. Okay. Larry, you want to make the motion on this one?
I move that the board approve the request for a variance set forth in item number 6. This decision is based on a review of the application, the testimony of the applicant, testimony offered in the public hearing, the results of site visits by board members, and the staff report. In approving this variance, the board adopts its findings and determinations found in items 1 through 5 of the staff report.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and second to approve the variance requested in item number 6. There's no further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Recusals? Okay, item number 6 is approved. Do we want to go back to 1, or should we just finish?
Let's finish what we have.
Finish number 7? Okay. Okay, this is Catholic Properties, 696 Duchess Turnpike. This is a use variance to allow a motor vehicle rental facility, enterprise, in a zone where motor vehicle rental is prohibited. This is an unlisted action, but there is included in your packet an environmental assessment short form. And it's an uncoordinated review, so.
Uncoordinated.
Yeah, on the,
Says coordinator, not here.
on the staff report, it says uncoordinated, but, okay, I move that the Town of Poughkeepsie ZBA declare itself lead agency for the purpose of reviewing the environmental impact of item number 7, the application by Patrick Properties for a use variance at 696 Dutchess Turnpike.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I further move that the town ZBA finds that based on the information contained in the environmental assessment short form, that the action proposed in item number 7 will have no significant impact on the environment.
Second.
Okay, made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Okay, any discussion on this?
I think that that building or that plaza was constructed in a time period when everyone had lots of offices and big offices and tons of paperwork and a lot of people to handle all this paperwork. And all of these people needed a place to park. So what we have here is a big, huge building with lots of office space and lots of parking that really is no longer relevant. People don't need offices that big anymore. We have computers. Some places are even paperless. So I think that the building has outgrown itself. And I think the fact that they have renovated it and gave it a fresh look was an effort to try to attract some people to move in there. The biggest part, I think, the biggest thing that hurts them is the fact that every single use, except for the library, and that may be in the school, you could count that, there already is one, if not two or three people in the exact same business right along that same area, from the 44 Plaza all the way up half of Route 44.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know where that you would find a different business that is a permitted use. And I think that we need to do something to keep that from becoming an abandoned eyesore, which we've seen plenty of.
Okay.
Just to add to that, I mean, it is a difficult site to make the left-hand turn
It is.
at different parts of the day. So with this use, it would minimize the traffic. I mean, he said a few cars, 12, 15, whatever it might be. The only thing I'd like to see, and I don't know if it's possible, that the planning board look to kind of get contain how many cars, rather than, and as they need to expand, maybe look at it. I don't know if that's something to, with cars,
Yeah.
trucks, and.
Well, we had a similar application from Enterprise down on South Road. And they were very clear, and in fact, I went by there to look at it. They do not have very many cars, and they turn them over.
Right, they need them out of there, I understand.
So that and that lot is so big.
Right.
That I just don't really think this is much of an issue.
Right, and I realize he wants to maintain parking for what's in there now, so, but.
I gotta tell you, when you're running up and down the road, you don't look at what's parked there. I never notice parked in there.
Yeah, the only thing that I would ask is that we include the condition that the use variance is valid for the rental of automobiles, pickup trucks, and cargo vans.
You want SUVs in
Put in SUVs.
We call them passenger vehicles.
SUVs, I mean,
And,
I guess that's considered a light vehicle.
I mean,
Yeah, okay.
passenger vehicles, pickup trucks, and cargo vans, that would cover your SUVs, I think.
And as applicants,
We can be explicit. Let's put in SUVs, and then we then there's,
Just include it.
yeah.
Right.
That they're looking for has far less impact than half of the uses that are permitted.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this seems to be a fairly benign business, the enterprise, and I would just like to see abandoned property like that to put to good use.
Yep.
And I trust that the planning board is really going to take care of the whole parking issues and the type of cars, right?
Okay. Anthony, you want to make the motion on this? And I think you can use the variance, only say use variance.
do we need to go through each test individually, or can we just do it as?
You can do it the way you adopt, if you're going to adopt the staff review, you can do it the way you would normally.
Yeah, they're all addressed in the staff report, the findings, yeah.
So it would be items 1.
It'd be 1 through 4.
And what the applicant submitted as well, I think needs to be with it also. Because that's where all the dollars.
Oh, right, because the staff review talked about making sure that you
Right.
had the financials, right?
Yeah.
Right,
Right, they gave us some of it, we noted that Rob provided some more, they did that tonight.
right,
Right.
okay.
Okay. Okay, Anthony.
I move that the board approve the request for a use variance set forth in item number 7. This decision is based on the review of the application, the testimony of the applicant, testimony offered in the public hearing, the results of site visits by board members, and the staff report. In approving this use variance, the board adopts as findings the determinations found in items 1 through 4.
And the testimony, I would say submitted by the applicant with that.
And the applicant's submission of
Where's the written, can I see the written thing that was handed out? I didn't get that.
tax.
They handed out here.
Oh, here, I have it.
And,
Tax data as provided for years, I think,
Okay.
2012.
all right, and,
I think you need the stuff that they submitted because it's.
Right, but you need to be explicit that you're basically, we have to word it in such a way that, let me think about this for a second.
I mean, the staff report is fine, but we need.
Right, the financials, which is the
Right.
staff report said that you need, and I'm just trying to think how to word it.
Well, the written,
Where's the written information?
that was submitted.
You could adopt as your
Originally,
findings.
yes.
I mean, you can adopt as your findings their submission.
Right,
okay.
both,
So-
we not adopt.
All right,
That
so
would
then,
cover it.
the board adopts as findings the determinations found in items 1 through 4 of the staff report and
And-
the financial statement submitted by the application.
And I'll just ask Mr. Olson to send me a Word document.
Okay. And then I would also add, the approval of this variance is subject to the following conditions.
Automobiles, SUVs, vans, cargo vans,
And pickup trucks, did you get that?
and pickup trucks.
Yeah.
There was an and.
Okay. Okay, so there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second. Second.
Second.
Okay, is there no further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Recusals? Okay, the use variance is granted 7-0. Okay, this now, we return to item number 1, William and Gail O'Neill.
10 years now, because the last week in class, they told us that you give out 1 use variance in 10 years.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about this again. We're done.
We're over.
It's over. Okay.
The easiest use variance application I've ever seen.
I know.
Bid all the financials.
Everything was done,
Yeah.
work was done.
Okay, Grace recused himself, and so Phyllis becomes a voting member on this item. Okay, the application is for a variance to allow parking of motor vehicles in the front yard at 73 Sunset Avenue. This is a type 2 action, so there's no further environmental think we have to deal with. In your packet, you'll find a staff report that recommends that this application be approved. Okay. Discussion?
Well, I think the engineering consultant told the whole story. I'm not an engineer, so I have to go by what stated in here, and that kind of makes the case, does it not?
Well, all right. Any other? Want to comment on this?
Well, yes, I really, in the engineering report and in the attorney's presentation were really excellent. However, notwithstanding, I'm still not convinced that this was not self-created. There is a way that they could park 3 cars and make use of the garage there. I'm just having a problem until the town decides exactly what we're going to do about this. We are supposed to look at each application separately. A couple of weeks, or last month, we did deny a request for the paved parking space in front of someone's house. That is quite different than this rental property with 4 tenants. But I think I would just like something definitive from the town regarding parking in front of homes. And I still can't buy the idea that, oh, there's a lot of them on this street. And that doesn't make it right necessarily. And are we going to maybe go that way by policy in the future? Possibly. Okay. So in the meantime, I think I'm not the one to read this because I will vote to.
Okay. I was just going to say that when almost immediately after this application was submitted, my issue was, and I mentioned this during the earlier discussion, was I thought it would be feasible to park the cars in the rear. In other words, to achieve the same goal without a variance. And this is something, as you know, that I often. This is an important issue for me. So I sat down and what I decided to do was to prove to them that in fact you could park the cars in the back. And so I made a scale drawing based on everything from tax records to the submission, and I even had a little car. And sure enough, the car fits in the driveway, around in the back, and then I figured out how you could park the cars and how you could back them up and so on. And indeed, it can be done. It can be done. I came up with a different number for what the required paving would be. I came up with a larger number than the engineer did, but it basically there is a number. Now, I looked at the number and I realized that it's actually a pretty big number. Just about the whole space in between the house and the garage would have to be paved. And so I did another calculation and realized that to do that, you would have more impervious surface on that lot than is allowed in our code. Okay. So now what we have is a situation where either the applicant needs a variance to allow parking in the front or a variance from the impervious surface requirement to put in a big parking and turning area in the back of the house. So now for me it becomes a problem of how do you balance this? You know, which of these? And as far as I'm concerned, in terms of kind of the overall impact, environmentally, in terms of the aesthetics and whatever, to me, parking in the front is the lesser of the two ills. And so I think what I'm going to be supporting this variance. I think because the so-called only, as far as I can see, the only feasible alternative, parking in the rear, leads to other problems. And so that's kind of where I come down on this. I'm not a big fan of parking in front of houses, but I think in this case, like I say, it's the lesser of the two ills.
And I think legal or not, it is within the character of the neighborhood, and at some point that needs to be addressed. But for us, we need to look at this one parcel, the application that's in front of us. I had 3 teenagers at one time. We had 5 cars in our driveway with a camper, and I will tell you, it was hell.
Sure.
So I know that they're not gonna go park in the garage, even if they should. I think this is a good way of controlling where they do park. And considering how narrow the street is, I always, I'm involved with the fire company, I worry about the rigs being able to get down the street and where they need to go. So I see this as a good way to handle the problem. And what else can they do if they can't park in the back? And you're right, I would rather see parking in front than to see more paving in the back, which is what it would take. And when you were talking before, Carmen, about the lights, and if you were to drive back there at night, and kids come in and out in the middle of the night all the time, there's no barriers back there where all those yards kind of come together. If you look at the aerial shot, they're going to hit every bedroom as they pull in there and go this way, for sure. So for that reason, I feel that this should.
Okay. Any other comments?
Just to reiterate what you said, I do agree with additional paving would not necessarily be in the best interest in this case. The road does have varying widths, and it does seem to bottleneck in some areas, especially in the vicinity of this property. I don't know if it seems like it's a separate issue, the parking on the street. That's something the town may want to look into addressing, if it's alternate parking or what have you. But as far as what the neighbor came in and said regarding her oil tank being filled up and there being parking on the side of the street, I mean, in that sense, there seems to be an issue, and I would think that the town should look into that. Because of the width of the road, I think it's separate from having the parking in the front of the house, but nonetheless, people seem to be parking on the side of the road. And for this instance, I mean, the driveway going to the rear is something separate from people parking on the side of the road.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. If not, then I'll just go ahead and make the motion. I move that the board approve the request for variance set forth in item number 1.
Take care of seeker.
Isn't this a type 2?
No, it's an uncoordinated,
Is it?
unlisted.
It's a type 2 action.
Where the heck was it?
I believe.
Yeah, this one says.
Oh, it's an unlisted action. Okay. Is there an EAF?
Yeah. Jennifer's nodding. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
There is? Okay, fine, okay. All right, I move that the Town of Poughkeepsie Zoning Board of Appeal declare itself lead agency for purposes of evaluating the environmental impact of the variance request in item number 1. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. I move that the town ZBA finds, based on the information contained in an environmental assessment short form, that the action proposed in item number 1 will have no significant impact on the environment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right, so now on the motion itself. I move that the board approve the request for a variance set forth in item number 1. This decision is based on a review of the application, the testimony of the applicant, testimony offered at the public hearing, the results of site visits by board members, and the staff report. In approving this variance, the board adopts as findings the determinations found in items 1 through 5 of the staff report. So move.
And can we add that also, the report from the engineer? Shouldn't that be part of, because that's not listed in 1 through 5.
Well, it's put as part of the.
It's a part of the application.
All right,
And the testimony, right?
all right, okay.
Yeah, so
It's part of the test.
we have that covered. Okay. All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, if not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, so the variance is approved 6-1. Okay. Okay, that brings us. No, that's an SUV. I took an SUV.
I can't get my new minivan into any.
I mean, I didn't want to be,
Oh, come on.
we didn't want to have a condition that the only cars could be, you know, smart cars or something. Okay, there's one item of correspondence, a time extension for Ambassador Square for an approved site plan for a proposed redevelopment project to remove an existing hotel structures and to create 4 new buildings along with new parking and utilities. The proposal includes a fast food restaurant, fueling station with attendant kiosk, a bank retail building, and a 3-story hotel. This is sent for us simply for our information. This, of course, is the case that we decided some months ago and which has been challenged in courts. And so the applicant simply wants an extension of the time period. So
The matter was actually decided for the town and the applicant at the trial court. There is an appeal, but in the meantime, they did not go forward with the project, and the time limit on the special use permit was ticking, as was the time limit on the site plan approval from the planning board. So they're asking for an extension of time. The planning department received plans for signature. I think we're probably ready to issue those within the next week or so.
okay, but there's no action this board needs to take.
Just to grant the time extension that's been requested.
Oh, I thought that was the planning board that did that.
No, on the special permit end of it, no.
Oh, okay, all right. So I move that the. Okay. So I move that the town ZBA grant a time extension for an approved special use permit for the Ambassador Town Square project, 2611 to 2629 South Road.
Second.
Okay. Any comment, discussion?
How long is the
Yeah,
extension?
you should grant them a specific time.
Okay. What would that be?
They request 6 months. Was it a 6-month extension? I think they requested 6 months. Yeah.
Okay, so the motion is to approve a time extension of 6 months for an approved special use permit, et cetera.
I'll still second it.
Okay. All right. If there's no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, done. That brings us to the end of the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.